So, lads, here is the current situation. I am stuck on an island, accompanied only by a small fox and my research papers somewhere in the ocean. I was left here by the organization, and to explain why, well, it all started with an invitation. I was provided a home by my new boss, Valley, the head of research, along with a set of tools and some land I would use to study plants and animals. You see, apparently there was a mysterious influx of flora and fauna sighted in the peaks, and I was asked to be part of the researching efforts to help understand this phenomenon. For now though, I was exhausted and not knowing where to start, I wandered north and found a large stump. Inside I met a grandmother and the proclaimed animal expert, Rhea. She bestowed me some seed bowls and explained step 1. Locate an animal such as this cat creature, take a small sample such as this fur ball, observe in the natural habitat multiple times, and finally feed the animal to tame it. Obviously, cats are not the biggest fans of seed bowl, so instead I plucked a feather from a chicken, observed, and once again failed as I needed 2 of them and I couldn't find the second one. Alright, night had fallen though, which marked a new opportunity of nocturnal animals, such as this fox here. I took some orange fur and began research, observing the species in 2 different areas, placing the seed bowl and fox does not eat the seed bowl. My next research topic should be on my frontal lobe. Finding a second chicken, it happily ate my seed bowl, officially becoming my first tamed creature. Still a little unsure of the next step, I checked my very empty research papers and made my way into town, hoping for a meat bowl. Entering the general store, I met Ming the artist, gathered some berries, and said hello to Sui, the stone enthusiast. Finding my way to the research library and meeting some co-workers. I also received a map of our town and the surroundings, before deciding that finding Rhea would be my best bet. She was not in the blacksmith, she was not in the fishing store, not in the library, I checked her already, not in their house. I spent the night clearing my farm. I had a letter the following morning from the cat fisherman inviting me over. Absolutely sure that this was how I was gonna get a meat bowl, I first wandered upwards and berated Rhea with my questions. Alright, she explained. First, I needed a suitable pen for my animal, food daily according to their diet, and loving pats every morning. Ignoring my new responsibilities, I instead walked west to the lakeside where I met with Sesame the fisher cat. He graciously provided me with a rod and bait, which I promptly utilized to secure myself a catch. For sure, I could feed the cat now, I thought, as I ran into a large boulder blocking a path, cast it a couple more times, found another cat, and attempted to tame it, and it didn't work. My license should be revoked. That night, I drowned my sorrows in alcohol, meeting many like-minded individuals in the process. My inventory was full, so building up a chest, I threw some stuff in and deciding that my fox research was getting nowhere, and since I only had 3 slots available, I swapped to chamomile instead. This granted me the great ability of foraging the seeds, so picking enough to complete a crop, I planted them down, trying desperately to water them amidst the torrential downfall. Alright, apparently 3 days until my research should be completed, so in the meantime, I made my way west, entering the fishing shop and purchasing some more bait. I spent that night using it, crafting a new chest to house my catch. The next morning, Sui was outside my door. He explained that a cave had been discovered and I should check it out, but regrettably my agenda currently consisted of temporarily halting Nob the chicken's starvation. Chamomile seeds were my target, but of course I needed 2 and there was only 1. Well, nothing modern capitalism can't fix, I thought as I said hello to some folks and entered the general store to find not only no seed bowls, but also nothing to help me cook the fish. Unfortunately for Nob, my agenda was now clear and I was happy to wander to the cave and peek inside. Apparently it housed an artifact that could teach us about the flora and fauna phenomenon. I just need to solve a riddle. I think I should cut some logs and sleep on it. The earth is blessed by the clouds dihydrogen monoxide, and today was the day that I would finally feed Nob the chicken. Unfortunately, the area around the waterfall was empty, the cliffside was empty, below the lake was empty, the gardens were empty, so I gave up and fished in the town, heading upwards and continued in the waterfall. But, exciting news, apparently a new store had opened in town, so after finally harvesting my flowers, I was able to complete my first research paper, chamomile. This also allowed me to finally craft a seed bowl and feed it to Nob. Having the leftovers planted and watered, I wandered north in hopes of expanding my farm. I found some cloudberries and wild violets, arriving in town to find Ming and Yan Yan worrying away about some stolen flowers from her store. Upon further investigation, we found some animal prints, quickly deducting a fox had been the culprit. A truly invigorating storyline. I also met Valley, who gave me a recipe in return for my research, strolling down south and saying hello at the caravan. Nothing caught my eye though, and remembering the new store, I entered carefully, meeting Tegan the witch doctor or something, being handed some items to deliver to Sui, quickly exploring and making my leave, popping into the tavern for a quick chat but returning promptly. You see, the recipe that Valley had given me was the seed shiv, and after placing one I was able to turn any produce into the respective seed. So I finished the farm and manufactured some seed bowls myself. Why? Well, I was about to make a bit of a breakthrough, but first I wanted more bait, which was unfortunate as the store was closed. Beginning some research on the Cloudberry, I was tasked with finding 2, which I once again failed. Locked in now, I remembered the artifact cave and the secret I was looking for, so reading up on it in the archive, I found the 3 empty shelves dedicated to my research, and handing in 1 scroll. If I wanted to complete it, I had a lot of work to do. Starting with the chicken, I noticed that Nob had a trait that increases our bond if there was a buddy in the same pen, and with some seed bowls in hand, I exited and immediately tamed up another, naming it Bug, to fulfill Nob's loneliness. And if you'd look at that, it had worked a charm, and Nob happily laid their first egg, allowing me to complete my research on chickens. Expanding my chest collection slightly, I wandered south and entered the archive, scouting what should be my next project, and after coming across a bunch near the waterfall, I eventually decided on the common purple flowers. Returning home and beginning the research, I said hello to the male bird, carefully observing both specimens and receiving some seeds in return. Shiving up the rest of them anyways, I used an unfortunate amount of energy, clearing a small part of my farm, planting the 3 wild violets, and hatching up a plan. You see, in general, I needed recipes for crafting easier research methods, and what better way is there than getting them sent to me? Buying some milk and beer, giving them as gifts, and chatting with a bunch of people, I attempted to make some new friends and crossed my fingers for the adjoining morning. And there was a surprise for me, just not a recipe in the mail. Instead, Sui here to explain he had found another cave, so after petting my chicken pair, harvesting some chamomile, watering my violets, and expanding the flower farm, I wandered to the designated area. Inside sat 5 pedestals, 1 blocked door, and a riddle on a stone. Further on, there was a larger opening housing 2 strange machines, a broken elevator, and a small mine entrance, which of course, I dove right in. Now, this would be soon discovered to be a hive of animal activity and various biomes, but for now, using my hammer, I gathered coal and gemstones, finding my first cave creature, which certainly wasn't a fan of the premonition of my existence. Continuing forth, I gathered cave flowers and met a dark salamander-looking creature, mining away at ores before looking at my energy bar, noticing my full inventory, and returning to the surface. On my way out though, the silhouettes of the required pedestal items were perfectly projected onto the back wall. I had them, I thought, as I ran back, passing out due to exhaustion. I was close to completing the puzzle, but I couldn't today because today was a special day. For one, Nob was happy enough to gain the perk of seed finding, and after a hasty farm expansion, I wandered south to enter my first festival in Shimmerbrook, the poetry competition. Caravan was selling nothing of value, and after chatting with everyone in attendance, I took a seat and attempted to cook up a piece of meaningful literature. Failing despicably, but posting it nevertheless, I finally casted my vote towards Ira the researcher. To wait for the results, I sat around and enjoyed the blossoms, walked around meaninglessly, talked to Valley, who was yapping about feeding chickens or something, finally ending the festival to see the results, to have nothing happen at all. Man, next year, I guess, well, the night was still young, so returning home, I gathered up the pedestal items and placed successfully 4 out of 5 of them. Alright, hurrying back, I heaped my pockets with random fish, but tragically, this too was not the answer. Whatever that final item was, I did not have it. Watering my plants, I was all the more invigorated to find it, but wandering upwards, I ran into a new animal, a small bunny, whose feces I quickly grabbed for myself. Now, I did complete a small walk around searching, but to no avail, even placing some random items, but quickly giving up, which surprisingly turned into my greatest play yet. As I entered the stump, chatted with Rhea, and opening the store, finally found all the types of food and their respective recipe. Making multiple purchases and excitedly running home, I chefed up a seafood bowl, headed right north and handed it to the first cat I saw, another easy tame. But here lay the second issue of the day, my inability to craft a new pen. This was promptly solved by entering the trunk and purchasing the blueprint, but here lay the third issue of the day, my profound lack of resources. I chopped some wood in a pathetic attempt to resolve the situation, but ultimately went to bed hapless. Good news, I could harvest all the flowers, including the purple ones, completing the research on purple violets. Hoping for a reward, I wandered south to the archive, dropped it in the shelf, and exited sadly with pockets none the heavier. It didn't matter though. Today I decided as I arrived at the mines that I would go full out and try to get as low as I could. Coming across a cave plant, I managed to observe it twice, but hoarded by my lack of energy and my tool being too weak for some rocks, I was forced to retire early. Still, I had foraged some pitch lily seeds, so shivving the rest of the flowers, I hoed some land, planted them down, and watered them lovingly. These would surely be my breakthrough project, was what I was thinking, but wandering outside the next morning, I noticed they still sat in seed seed form, and upon opening my journal, I realized they needed pebble fertilizer and a shade cloth just to be able to grow. My goodness. What a pain. Demoting them to low priority, in fact just chopping the seeds completely, I wandered off once again searching for the final item. My current idea, what would prove to be the correct one, was I could fish for it, so arriving at Sesame's I purchased the recipe for bait, realizing I didn't have any bugs, bought a bunch of bait, checked the fish wall, which didn't look promising, but nonetheless excited to throw out my line. For some reason, my farm pond was what I chose, very unintelligently. And to continue this streak, new presumption just dropped. First though, I made sure Knob was fed and my crop was watered before getting to work locating and slashing every piece of fiber I could. Why, you may ask? Well, I needed fiber to craft an animal pen, which I placed down and gave my cat as a home. That's right, I bet the cat gives the final pedestal piece. Alright, locking in, I read Pepper the cat likes 3 growing crops and only having access to 2 currently, I hurried out, immediately completing observation for cloudberries and returning with the seeds in hand. My initial notes told me they needed to be planted on a cloudy day, which by luck today was. Nice, I thought as I wandered out, I just need to wait for my cat to grow up to complete the cave puzzle. I spent the night shaking every tree I saw for sticks and stuff, as well as collecting all the fiber that I could. Great thing I was on downtime too is I had a letter saying a tinkerer of sorts had set up their store in Shimmerbrook. Curious on what a tinkerer could mean, I watered my crops and made my way down, entering the modest building. The new storekeeper introduced himself as Alfie the robot arm guy, who seemed to specialize in automation on the farm, even handing me a sprinkler as reverse housewarming. Unfortunately, I was far too poor for anything he had on sale, instead peeking into the blacksmith as I liked the idea of a tool upgrade, but they too were too expensive. Alright, well, if your bank account fails you, you could just receive the item for free of charge, is how the old saying goes. So returning to pick up some flowers, I got to work handing them out to my fellow villagers. This was then chatting with Valley. She expressed her thought that maybe I needed to fish for the final item. Now, I am not one to argue with that, I thought as I threw in my first cast, got a bite, and of course immediately received the last pedestal item. Finally, would this reveal the secrets of Shimmerbrook, you may be asking? Because in fact, no it didn't. Didn't do anything, to be honest. Trusting the process, I spent the night fishing. Still trusting the process, I carefully watered my plants, wandered up, and of course the process never lies. A section had opened up, giving me the final artifact, allowing me to research one more thing. But more importantly, some new doors had opened. New puzzles seemingly too difficult for me right now, but most importantly, a massive stone door and 5 lights above it. If I collected 5 artifacts, it would open to reveal to me a secret area and the secrets of Shimmerbrook. For now though, my financial strife struck me as more of an issue, and I made the executive decision to spend the day running around foraging, picking up seeds, and further expanding my farm. But for now, my main goal was to tame a grass bun. Wandering up and through the small forest, I found some outside the stump, realizing I needed vegetables to tame them, and after luckily finding some, I crafted up some bowls. Taming one down near the lake, I named it Grun, and immediately ran into the main issue with this venture. I was still far too poor to afford the ladder home, but running into the wilderness of my farm, I remembered anything is possible with the power of friendship, positive affirmations, and unfortunately, Grun will be sleeping rough tonight. Good news though, Pepper had given me a sparkling leaf, marking the completion of my research on cats. Nevertheless, Grun's homeless situation still large, I wandered around looking for any fiber. Passing the lake, I collected some peppermint, strolling through the garden and finding some berries in someone's front yard, but it was only the following morning that, after feeding my cat, I was able to finally craft up and place down Grun's pen. Hoping he didn't hate me too much, I did some leisurely fishing before setting on a large farm expansion. Since it was raining, I was more than happy to hoe some land, and deciding that garlic would grow here, I wandered out looking for some, and kept wandering and okay, there was no point, only finding mushrooms, berries, and more mushrooms. The farm expansion would tragically remain empty for the night. I harvested my chamomile and wild violets the next morning, watering the farmland again and strategically leaving some flowers growing around the cat to appease its curious trait. But more importantly, wandering east, I finally found and observed the last garlic, allowing me to plant them. On my victory lap now, I headed into town where I chatted with Yan and Ming, the painter, picking some berries and visiting the tavern to say hello to Lisa. I'm getting sidetracked though. Returning quickly, I made 8 seeds using the shiv and planted them next to the bunny pen to probably make him happy before wandering out once again, running into a potato. Beginning its research and observing, I noticed something in my papers. Garlic could only grow in sunlight. Well, that shouldn't be a problem as long as it doesn't rain. Okay, it's raining. This meant my garlic would wither without access to sunlight. How to solve this problem? Well, I needed a sun lamp, and without the means to craft one, I headed into town, hoping someone was taking advantage of this gap in the market. The blacksmith obviously wasn't, the tinkerer also wasn't, this is just someone's house. Finally though, entering the general store, I was saved, running back home and placing down the lamp. Crisis averted, I wandered off, but on my way to buy some bait, I came across the final potato, observing it and foraging some seed. My initial research told me it also needed constant sun, so purchasing another sun lamp, there goes at half my net worth, I put it on my farm, placing some potatoes, and ran back to the fishing shop to find it closed. Good news though, my cloudberries were ready for harvest, meaning my research was complete. There's more than 3 plants here, which also meant Pepper's curious trait was fulfilled. What's not going to be filled though is his stomach after today, as I had run out of food. Truly peak scripting. I arrived at the archive and handing in some scrolls, I did some light reading of my fellow researchers' work, wandering all the way back to the fishing store to find it was once again closed. Alright, today though, I had a strict plan. This involved watering up my crops and heading north to the stump, saying hello to grandma and making the purchase of the egg bowl recipe and crafting one up. Keeping it for now, I killed the time until night by grabbing some chamomile and handing them out to the townsfolk. In the general store and in the archive, night had fallen though, and you know what that means. I placed down the egg bowl and tamed my first fox, Kelp. You see, along with meat, they ate egg and fish, which made the cat pen suitable for it to happily live in. On top of this, they both had the curious trait, no extra effort is truly a blessing. The good news continued through the night, as when I woke up, both my garlic and my rabbit were ready for harvest, meaning I had completed the research for both of them. I wandered down to hand them in, making a stop at the fishing store to check the opening hours before heading inside the archive. I chatted with Ira and submitted both my papers, being rewarded with a meat bowl. Asking Valley, I could also check my researcher level, which was currently 1. I had though received a small prize for my efforts, and deciding to spend it, I arrived at the tinkerer's store and bought the basic sprinkler recipe, leaving me dirt poor once again. And also, I cannot make it. Like, what are all 3 of these items? To drown my sorrows, I deforested some space, purchasing some bait from Sesame, and fished the night away, passing out in doing so. I luckily didn't get charged the next morning, but I had made a blunder. You see, turns out my fox actually doesn't eat seafood, so it just hadn't been eating it all. Luckily they both eat eggs, so feeding them well as to progress research, I wandered out looking for another forageable to observe. I pondered descending the mines, thought better of it, and began research on a strange cat-shaped flower. Unfortunately, I couldn't find a required second sample. Feeding my animals the following morning, I wandered out again across the meadow, through the waterfall and down the cliffside. To my surprise, once again, failing to observe a single cat-shaped flower. Spotting some fish in the pond, I took my mind off it by catching a bunch, both for profit and to feed any future fish-eating animals, those of which I placed in a chest, took some flowers from another chest and spent the remaining day giving them to townsfolk, hoping to strengthen our friendship bond. Still the one cat flower on my mind, I once again tended to my livestock, harvested some garlic cloves and exited, determined to source one. I ran into Rhea on my rounds and headed back to my farm. She gave me some feedback on my progress, handing me a creature compendium to help with managing everything after an inevitable great expansion. For now though, cat flowers weren't around, so I felled trees in the way of future farmland, and once my energy was empty, I picked up some more flowers, handing them out in the archive, the general store, saying hello to the bird, and finally in the general store, I had received a newsletter describing the appearance of extremely rare, unusually colored and glimmering versions of normal animals. I had an inkling they would be lucrative for me to tame. Harvesting my potatoes and completing the research, this was the last book I needed to upgrade my rank, and submitting it, I got a shade cloth and 2 recipes for sandy and loamy soil. On top of this, I had another research slot to run more simultaneously, and running to the cave with the aim of beginning more research, I was stopped dead in my tracks. At the top of the meadow sat a pink, glimmering chicken. Opening my papers, I reminded myself chickens eat seeds, so running down, I secured a bowl. Relieved to see it was still there, I tamed it. Wondering what great things were to come, I arrived back at the cave, descending to collect ores, stone, flowers, and fiber for pens for the night. It was officially the 1st of summer, and another groundbreaking letter had reached my mailbox. It introduced composting and its specific ingredients, but not currently requiring it. I noticed my fox was happy, giving me a slice of meat. Hoping it had gone hunting last night, I completed the research, crafting a chest and a composter, placing in some stone and leaves, receiving some pebble fertilizer as a reward. Now, I knew pitch flowers in the caves needed this, so ignoring all of the new flora and fauna of summer, I descended again in hopes of securing enough seeds to complete the research. Luckily, I found 2 pitch lilies and an interesting statue. On my walk home, there were more strange animals, but for now, I just planted my lilies. Turns out that my shimmering chicken actually made double the produce of a normal animal. Truly lucrative and and after placing the strange, suspiciously Junimo-shaped statue, I excitedly wandered out to begin research on the wild boar, sunflowers, and a flower named Starburst. Having to regrettably ignore an extremely domesticatable looking animal, I observed a boar again, grabbed a veggie bowl and tamed it. Same pen as the rabbit. Phew, I'm trying to cut costs. I tried planting a sunflower, but that required quality fertilizer, which I was too lazy to obtain for now just chopping logs. Alright, you got me, I changed my mind. I now want quality fertilizer, and thinking I could buy some, I wandered into town. Reading Tegan's community post about cicadas, it turns out I was dead wrong. You cannot buy any. At the very least, wandering around, I began research on the wood ram goat, completing the observations but without the pen space. I instead opted to plant my starbursts near a body of water according to my research. I woke up the succeeding morning to find my wild boar research was complete, and after tending to the rest of my animals and foraging around through the northern area of the town, I wandered down to hand in the paper before Obelix could get his hands on it. Now, all this extra foraging had warranted me extra starburst seeds, so not seeing the issue in extra funds, I planted them all, not wasting this extra energy of mine and fishing the night away. I thought it was a good idea at this point to begin research on watermelons, a certainly profitable sounding venture, so heading north I observed the large fruit twice, a little worried as I realized they required natural fertilizer to grow. Reading up on this further, I realized I could make both natural and quality fertilizer right here at home using the composter. So happily stress-free now, I used some forage to craft a seed bowl and used it to tame myself a wood ram goat. All my grinding coming in handy when I was able to build it a new pen, proceeding by picking up some ingredients and crafting some natural fertilizer. Then I just walked out downwards through town, up past the lake and back to my farm. I'm watching this and I genuinely could not tell you what I was doing. A victim of my own stupidity, I was forced to, after tending to all of my animals, spend the morning collecting a little extra fiber and crafting up the last of the required fertilizer. This obviously allowed me to plant both the sunflowers and the watermelons, heading out to forage again, as well as to search for the goat prints I needed to observe in order to complete my research. Nice, all I needed now was to receive an item from a happy goat. Checking my shipping bin receipt, I had another newsletter. It told me the summit was now accessible thanks to some various townsfolk's efforts, and excited to see it, I fed all my animals, watered all my crops, and headed upwards. Entering carefully, it was a surprisingly spacious area with a new tree type, birch, a beautiful view, and most exciting of all, a hot spring where I could regain my energy completely free of cost. I had nothing on for the rest of the day, so visiting various shops, I found one selling a forge recipe, which I assembled up at home and spent the night smelting the caving ores and clearing some more farm space. Why, you may be asking? Well, an issue was arising. I now had 7 animals living on my farm, and this meant 7 bowls of food per day. I could not provide this for much longer, so wandering into town, I purchased 4 sun lamps and got to work clearing another large area to the west. My plan was to plant a large crop of garlic to feed my research subjects, and utilizing the hot spring for infinite energy, I was able to chip away, visit the hot spring, chip away further, visit the hot spring, and finally fully clear a suitable space into which I placed the sun lamps and 32 garlic heads. It was sunny in the morning and my wood ram goat research was complete. Watering at this point was a huge bother as my watering can could only satiate 8 tiles at a time and my energy bar would fully deplete by the time I was done. This mattered little though as long as I was on the grind and now more food was imminent. I was happy to tame up another goat purely for profit's sake before heading down to the archive as night fell and handing in my wood ram research. And still sure that there were many summer plants left to observe, I foraged around through the night. Now the watering situation is insane, but slightly improved when after tending to my animals, I was able to harvest 8 watermelons and complete the respective research. Nonetheless, I was still tired after watering and completion, so visiting the summit and rejuvenating in the hot spring, I wandered east to the mines with one specific goal in mind, to reach the 10th level. This of course was because the elevators still didn't work and I was sure I could fix it upon arriving there. On the way I began observations on a new type of cave flower, unable to forage for seeds before arriving at level 10, where waiting for me was absolutely nothing. Slightly disappointed, I left. This mood quickly dissipated though as gathering my produce, I noticed all my garlic was already good for harvest, pulling a very modest 96 cloves in total. So 48 bowls, technically secured, I replanted the lot, watered, and of course made a return to the hot spring. Today, although I had much the same plan as yesterday, I would approach from a different angle. Reading away at the various papers scattered in the room, I worked out this was a magic forge, and returning home to grab some feathers and a gemstone, I was able to see it in action, providing me with a mana cell. What exactly I used this for, I was not sure, so for now I descended normally, exploring the levels, including this strange overgrown area with a sentient bundle of leaves, managing to observe the last flower required before running home and planting the foraged seeds under my shade cloth. I had forgotten one thing though, ago, and that was to submit my watermelon research. So finishing up on my farm, I made my way downwards, chatting with some folks, entering the archive, chatting with some folks, and handing in my papers for peer review. Alright, I was kind of sick of manufacturing new bowls every day, so purchasing an auto feeder. I thought maybe a blueprint existed, but checking the Tinkerer, aka Alfie's awesome automations, I was proven incorrect. Instead, checking a tool upgrade's price, returning home to get the materials, running back, and ordering an upgrade for my hammer. Back at home, I slotted the auto feeder and filled it with 40 veggie bowls. Welcome back everyone to my morning routine. First I egg my chickens, then I water all my garlic before walking upwards and relaxing in the hot spring. My next step is always... It's a dog. Wanting to tame said dog, I decide to chop some trees on my farm, enough at least to craft up a new pen, placing it above my carnivores and returning to tame up my new friend. Alright, lock in without interruptions. Welcome back to my morning routine. First, I tend to... my sunflower research is complete. I also feel it's a good time to introduce perks, a buff each animal unlocks after a certain bond is reached. My rabbit, for example, grows a bunch of fiber around a tile I've watered. Anyways, harvesting all my garlic, a modest 97. I was feeding my animals when I misclicked, doubling my dog's egg consumption and leaving my cat hungry for the day. Nothing you can do. Replacing the garlic, this time with watermelons, 31 in total, and wandering out again, followed by my 2 chickens. You see, their perk let them forage for extra seeds, and my goal being to feed them, I happily returned when I was satisfied. My fox's perk was berry collector, so making good use of that as well, I began research on the egg bloom, just another summer plant, but as soon as night fell, I changed my mind, quitting the research prematurely and beginning observations on the strange nocturnal creature. Now, apparently to complete this stage, I need to find one that was resting, requiring me to sneak up behind it, finally noting its name and diet, the water, and notably seafood. I had no seafood bowls currently, but after some quick fishing, I was able to fix this issue, placing it down and successfully taming my first summer nocturnal creature. The next was an exciting day. You see, both my dog research and my starburst research were complete, so with my sunflower papers also in hand, I excitedly headed south and into the archive. Submitting them, I received a bookcase, and examining the shelves, it seemed I wasn't even close to completing every single research. Never mind, moral undefeated, I wandered to the blacksmith, collecting my new copper hammer, and made an order for a copper axe. Quite set on emptying my bank account, I purchased another auto feeder from the general store, and spent the day clearing land, not to make space, but to collect wood strictly to be fashioned into bowls. With a short, hot spring break, I completed my goal, and using the latest batch of garlic, I crafted up 32 veggie bowls for my wood ram goats. An ice cream festival soon, apparently. Anyways, the next step was profit, and never having enough of it, I completed my farm chores and left, searching for another wild boar to domesticate. I quickly found one, moved it in with my other boar, unfortunately at the expense of Grun the rabbit. I actually felt bad enough for him that I used my precious resources on making him a whole new pen. Now, the 17th of summer was a disastrous day. It began fine. I took a strength potion I got from Tegan, which helped me chop a whole lot more trees than normally possible. Before, of course, I need to visit the hot spring, managing to clear a surprisingly impressive amount. But this was when the catastrophe struck. I realized I forgot the natural fertilizer that watermelons needed to grow. Alright, time to lock in. Shoving a whole bunch of stuff into my composter, I watched as it slowly ticked up, but running dry on resources faster than I could have imagined. All I needed was more dry leaves. Wait a minute, hear me out. The cat's perk was that any seed I watered would instantly germinate, which I could then chop for leaves, but it was raining, so I couldn't water them. Truly a sad moment in history. You should subscribe so it never happens to you. I had one job today. My water research was complete. Anyways, I had one job today. That was to get 32 natural fertilizer so my watermelons could finally grow. The plan, to pick the pitch lilies, completing the research, water them, then head to the mines to collect fiber. Okay, it seems this situation was more dire than I first anticipated. All the plants had withered, leaving them as nothing but dry leaves. Top 10 saddest Family Guy moments. They say that crawling is fine as long as you're moving forward, so planting some egg blooms, I moved past the incident, deciding to plant some sunflowers instead. Learning from my past, I adamantly crafted fertilizer for them, only finishing in the dead of night and managing to sow all 32 seeds. Time to cheer up though, as today was the ice cream festival. Feeding my animals and watering my crops, I quickly grabbed from my chest whatever sounded like it was nice on ice cream, then wandered down to the town, then down to the garden. Spending some time chatting with everyone there, I tried out the 3 tubs of communal ice cream before finding a table where I could make my own. Alright, step 1 was to cook your own ingredient by hitting the right spot. Step 2 was freezing your mixture, and finally step 3 was to stir it up into your frozen treat. I bought a solid amount of ingredients, and there was no way I was passing up the opportunity to make them worth more money. Cooking up, freezing, and stirring up 21 ice creams in total, varying in flavors. Mostly they were for gifts, hopefully worth the time investment. Wait a minute, is everyone hinting at what flavor they enjoy through their short dialogue? Testing this hypothesis, I made a short list. Z likes ice cream with more ice, mint maybe? Sui likes berry flavor, Theo Romeo likes maple flavor, Tegan likes mint flavor, Yan Yan likes all of them, Zuri likes milk flavor, Sam also likes milk flavor, Ira likes berry flavor, Greydor likes plain, like vanilla, maybe milk, and finally Naeem possibly likes milk, no idea. Hopefully I'm not embarrassingly off the mark. Nevertheless, from simply chatting, I had gained a huge amount of friendship with everyone, unlocking hangout events. I also received a letter saying Zuri had created a teleporter, which certainly interested me, so curious on its credibility, I fed all of my animals, bringing a couple of scrolls to the archive to submit them, being rewarded with a cavern pen for my efforts. Anyways, more importantly, I had some teleporting to do. Knocking on Zuri's door and heading inside, there sat a pedestal and two strange markings on the floor, and after a quick demonstration, she proved her letter accurate. Surprisingly enough, she was also kind enough to give me a pedestal for myself, which placing down on my farm allowed me to teleport straight to the Violet Archive at the expense of a small amount of mana. The rest of the day was a little goofy visiting the general store. I witnessed the storekeeper being a bit racist, put a stop to that nonsense, being the upstanding and charismatic man I am, walking downwards and nonchalantly scheduling a hangout with Ira. Lads, it is strictly platonic, I promise you. Then I beelined to the blacksmith, where I collected my copper axe, replacing the order with a copper watering can. Using this nice new axe, I chopped away at some larger stumps on my farm, once again backed by the hot spring. Alrighty, I'm not nervous at all, but one day until the hangout. After responsibly feeding and watering, I completed my raw bulb research on my way to the archive, stopping at Ming's painting stall and purchasing one before submitting my paper. To make it seem more platonic, I asked Yan Yan and Ming to hang out on the days afterwards and wandered back up. It doesn't look suspicious, right, everyone? Right. This was a pretty unfortunate time for the brain fog, as I met Luke in the woods, who wasn't looking well at all. At this moment, I imagined pouring water on his head as being a thoughtful and soothing way to heal the illness. It just really pissed him off, and he left. I gotta lock in. Maybe explore the mines for a bit. Hello? What's up? It was Ira, worried about venturing down alone. Of course, I agreed to accompany her. So like, what's the brand of your microwave? Oh my. She headed off, leaving me to descend alone, beginning research on a small mushroom fella, and leaving when my energy ran low. Alright, don't panic lads, but today is in fact the hangout day. Once again, I responsibly took care of the farm, grabbing a berry ice cream for no reason, and wandered down nonchalantly. We had decided to hang out in the archive, where we read my completed research, chatted on the bench, and finally observed the map that she herself had created. Finally, I pulled the ice cream from my pocket and handed it over. There you go. Just like that, a perfectly scored hangout and my first green heart. I could now track everywhere she goes. I had a letter saying a romantical butterfly brooch was now on sale at the general store. Pretty strange timing. Anyways, today was my hangout with Ming the painter, so I watered and headed over to the lake, our decided meeting spot. Together we watched the water, hung out by the campfire, and went for a short little boat ride. Unfortunately, I couldn't track him quite yet. I spent the night clearing some stumps and fishing in my pond. I had no hangout scheduled for today. Instead, my main goal was to observe and tame the cave mushroom fellow and to make use of my cavern pen. Visiting the blacksmith for my watering can, it was closed for the day. Alright, well, I didn't know what the mushroom fella would eat, so visiting the stump and purchasing a bunch of bowl recipes, I crafted some and headed over to the mines. Quickly enough though, I ran into the sentient leaf pile, and not passing the opportunity, I tamed it using the veggie bowl. Now, as long as the mushroom fella doesn't eat veggies, I should be fine. Not long after, I ran into the mushroom fella and yep, he eats vegetables. I had none left. This was a truly sad moment, but not an unsalvageable one. So quickly returning to the surface, I made a dash home, made some veggie bowls, and ran back to the mines to find that they had already reset. I mean, I did have the leaves at the very least, who were placed in the cavern pen. Today though, I was hanging out with Yan Yan. I'm truly a very busy man. Foraging around a little, I wandered down, meeting her in the garden. Together we looked at some nice flowers, talked about how she came to the town through this road, and sat and chatted on a bench. A nice time, but on my way home, stopping by, I picked up my copper watering can, which would hopefully take off some load from my watering each day. The next step in my vision of a prosperous future included an organized farm in order to increase income. So wandering out, I entered the tinkerer's store looking for any money-making automations, purchasing a trowel but not finding whatever I was looking for. Instead, purchasing 4 sun lamps from the general store, I set on taming more animals for more produce with similar interests for efficiency. This dog did not fit the criteria and was let go. This goat did, but this dog didn't. I returned home with a new goat, spent some time organizing the pens depending on the interests of the residents, also harvesting my sunflower field and promptly replanting. My egg blooms were ready for harvest in the morning, effectively completing my research on them. I had my sentient leaves scroll too, so arriving at the archive, I handed them both in, receiving a magic forge blueprint for my efforts. Sure, it would come in handy, I further organized the creatures on my farm, including visiting the general store to purchase 3 auto feeders with little expectation. I exited looking for moneymakers. Then, as if a higher power heard my wishes, a shimmering dog appeared. Quickly making it a bowl and taming it, it turned out social, the easiest to satiate trait, literally the perfect tame. Placing the lad in with my other dog, I set everyone up with an auto feeder and carefully read my research to decide what to feed each pen. Using this knowledge, I somewhat filled a couple of the feeders, watering my crops before wandering down south and arriving at Sesame's shop. I did some foraging around until the store opened, buying some bait and throwing out my line on the pier. Only when I ran out of energy did I leave that spot, beelining to the hot spring to rejuvenate, using my new energy fishing at the pond near my home until the leaves of fall started to appear. So yeah, it was now fall. This meant a couple of things. One, all of my sunflowers died. Not actually because of the change in weather, because I forgot to give them fertilizer. The second thing was new crops, of which I needed immediately if I were to continue feeding my animals. Sprinting out, I found a bunch of new plants and roaming ducks, beginning research on pumpkins, managing to observe twice and foraging some seeds. I planted 8 of these on my farm, making the appropriate fertilizer, then accidentally chopped one seed. Not liking this at all, I headed around the map looking for a replacement, but to no avail. Giving up, I planted some cave dwellers around the curious trait animals. This pumpkin, fresh in my mind, I foraged for the entire subsequent morning, observing a bear-shaped flower and eventually foraging its seeds. No more pumpkins had appeared, unfortunately, so returning home, I read up on these bared flowers, quite annoyed to see that they needed both acidic soil and quality fertilizer. Now, acidic soil was crafted with sulfur powder, which was sold at the blacksmith, and apparently I needed some flowers too. Returning, I bought some, made both fertilizers, and planted the twats down. And by the way, I still have no idea how to get resin. A cool discovery happened today, but first, I went out foraging again. My third fall plant research was on the spook root, which observing one, I was able to forage the seeds of. On top of this, more pumpkins had appeared, so throwing them in the shiv, I was able to, first placing in the appropriate fertilizer, plant 5 more. The spook roots were a little difficult, so in the meantime, I walked to the mines with one goal in mind. Slowly grinding downwards, I ate the seasonal berries for satiation, dropping floor after floor, eventually resorting to eating the fruits I'd found foraging in the depths, until finally arriving on the 20th floor. Here sat the elevator, probably awaiting mana to function or something, but descending the ladder, I found something even more awesome. A whole new desert section of the mines with new plants and creatures, but without the means to explore, I begrudgingly returned home. Okay, so amidst this excitement, a blunder had been made. 8 of my pumpkins had withered. Apparently they needed to be within 3 tiles of water, which I thought this was, but tragically these 2 tiles actually count, and only 1 line of pumpkins had survived. Well, crawl forwards, I guess, so heading out to forage again, I ran into something lucrative, that being the carrot. Sure, this would be the garlic equivalent. I imagined the food I could produce with these. Eventually finding a second one to observe and foraging some seeds. Oh, my research says I needed kelp fertilizer. Well, there goes my dreams of easy farming. Nevertheless, I, after a short trip to the town, crafted some up and placed down the carrots. I also planted the spook root now, as they needed to be sowed during the night. Alright, my animals had already begun to go hungry, and determined to give them a bunch of food, I foraged all around, returning home with some more carrot seeds, which after crafting more kelp fertilizer, I planted next to the old lot. I did this the following morning too, stopping off at Alfie's Awesome Automations to purchase the auto tapper blueprint. This was all part of automating my farm. I needed sprinklers, which needed resin, which I presumed came from a tapper. Concluding my foraging, I returned to my farm where I planted more carrots and pumpkins, facing the next material for sprinklers, being iron, and descending the mines to collect some. Exploring the sandy depths, I was relatively successful in doing so. Tending to my farm, I smelted my newly collected iron into bars, using these for now to craft some tappers, which I strategically placed on different trees. Okay, never mind, I can't. Well, all or nothing, I say, heading out to forage, hoping for carrots in order to feed my starving animals. Luck was on my side, and I managed to collect a significant amount, relaxing in the hot spring as a reward for myself, returning as I recognized the large amount of fertilizer crafting ahead of me. I spent the night doing exactly that, allowing the carrot farm to expand a whole 12 carrots. This isn't really sustainable though, I just about didn't have enough fiber to continue the farm expansion. This was certainly an issue, but for now my bear flower research was complete, yay! At the very least, meaning of course that I ordered a hoe upgrade from the blacksmith and purchased 5 strength potions from Tegan, one of which I chugged down before delving back into the depths of the desert section. Iron being my goal and time being my only limiting factor, I was able to grind out a bunch. Wait a minute, level 40 might be possible today, I realized, so locking in, I was only 1 floor away past midnight, miraculously finding the way down, forgetting to check the next section, instead sprinting home to save myself. Luke met me at my door the next morning. He told me a whole new mushroom forest area had been discovered. I thought more plausibly it was a single mushroom and he had taken it. My pumpkin research was complete in other news, but this meaning little to me. I began smelting more metal, got too impatient, and crafted 2 more furnaces and used my new factory to smelt up a bunch of copper and iron into bars. Sprinklers still in the back of my mind, I arrived at the mines with the mana cell materials, crafting up more as they were needed in the blueprint. Returning promptly, I did something arguably more important in beginning eggplant and tomato research. I unfortunately fell short on the step 1 of finding some to observe. Alright, giving Luke the benefit of the doubt, I walked down to where he claimed to have discovered a mushroom forest, heading through the gap and arriving in a massive shaded area covered by a gigantic cap, surrounded by all types of mushrooms to forage. There was also a small hut in the corner, but no resident as of now. The rest of the day was spent completely uselessly looking for eggplants and tomatoes, its only contribution being bringing us closer to the heat death of the universe. Right now, I was just waiting for both my carrots and pumpkins to grow, as well as my tappers to produce some resin so I could make some sprinklers. Utilizing my free time, I once again wandered out looking for eggplants and tomatoes, searching everywhere. Okay, wait a minute. Eggplants and tomatoes grow in summer. It was currently not summer. Sometimes my brilliance surprises even myself. Extremely disappointed in myself, I walked around lost, then fished with a lot of melancholy. I foraged around again the next morning because I'm good at nothing else, collecting my copper hoe and commencing work on project Make Every Animal on my farm Happy, by first moving some carrots over in a fashion that would eventually satisfy some curious creatures. I also moved a pumpkin using my trowel, but since it would be away from the wood, I was unsure whether or not it would survive. Okay, it did not survive. And also, my tappers hadn't produced anything. Fall was not the month for Red TM. Grasping for straws now, I wandered down to the mushroom forest to see if anyone was residing in the mushroom house, instead finding myself an interesting statue, the first of what would become my collection. Anyways, with the wait almost up, I made a quick visit to the archive, where I accepted a bunch of requests, and returning home, got them ready for a quick delivery in the morning. First on my list was Sui, who wanted some ores which I handed over. Next required me to head north. The tappers were done, but they gave me maple syrup, and maple syrup is not tree resin. Well, I handed Rhea some sand for the quest, spending some time foraging around before making my way down to the caravan, where I bought the shade cloth blueprint, the loom blueprint, and the spinning wheel blueprint. Okay, next I needed sulfur for acidic soil for my blueberries, so I picked up the required flowers. To find the store closed. He is almost as bad as Marnie Stardew. Well, I had bought new blueprints to keep myself occupied, so crafting up both a loom and a spinner, I used various wools and a stick to make yarn, which I would weave into the loom with a stick to make fabric. Using it, I crafted up another shade cloth, under which I planted some more spook root. Alright, rare occurrence just dropped. I just had an educated thought. After quickly ordering another hammer upgrade from the blacksmith, I thought about where I could find resin, and decided the solution must be to tap birch trees on the summit. And already accepting thanks from my future self, I descended into the mines, this time more prepared upon finding another mushroom fella who I managed to tame. I also observed a rock salamander guy, but unfortunately it only ate meat, which of course I didn't have. This bad luck ended though as I exited the caves, beginning research on the skull-headed crow, observing some around the map before promptly returning with the appropriate food and taming it. I placed the fella in with my water. The carrot and pumpkin failures still haunted this farm, and funds had reached such a low I could only feed the animals currently under research. Now, we weren't through fall yet, but before it became too late, I tamed up a duck, a great plan as it turned out social. And now my reason clouded by promises of riches, I headed out looking for another mouth to feed for more profit. I tamed up Frank the duck, but ooh, he's a veggie lover. The company went under a change of management and Frank unfortunately had to be let go. I realized then there was a festival today, so wandering over, I entered to find a bunch of large lantern decorations and an expansive board of riddles. If I could get all 4 correct, yeah, okay, I'm cooked. With only 2 of the possible 6 lanterns to spend, I bought a cute water lantern and a wish for wisdom, which was a pretty tough ask. Together we watched the lanterns float off into the sky. Surprisingly, my bony bird research was already complete the next morning. Then remembering my capitalistic dreams, I crafted up another pen specifically for ducks and made my exit looking for another social fella. Luck was on my side and my first hire was social. I had nothing else planned, so I wandered through town and fished in the river for the evening. My research train was rolling and spook route was also officially completed. Once again, only feeding the relevant creatures, I walked out and threw out my line. This is where I sat for the entire day. Why, you may be asking? Well, Sesame had a main story quest where I showed him a fish part. The issue being, I donated my fish part to the cave pedestals and now I had no way of continuing this storyline. Eating to keep myself going, I fished away, but to no avail. My duck research was also complete the next morning, and just needing some footprint analysis for the mushrooms, I visited the blacksmith to pick up my hammer, returning to the mines, and descended. Collecting coal as well as ores, I eventually came across a mushroom fella, had a good observation of its footprints, and completing the research. It was truly a good day, and holding 4 finished papers, I arrived at the archive, set up another completely platonic hangout with Ira, and submitted all of my work. In return, I got a music box which apparently keeps animals happy. I wonder if it overrides the fact they haven't eaten in weeks. Still, though, the elusive fish part fresh in my mind, I fished until I ran dry on bait, entering Sesame's store where I bought more bait and even upgraded my rod, throwing in the line once again, but to no avail. Still preserving 28 bait for future occasions, I returned to my farm where I organized my various items and placed the music box onto my dog pen. I can't remember the last time I fed them. I cast out my line, did a little fishing. I then was out on my daily forage the next morning when I ran into Rhea purchasing some furniture from Theo. Being of course the great guy I am, I stepped up to help them transport the table and got thanked, and that's it. Alright, well, I could smell a fish part in these areas, so once again, throwing in my line, I got absolutely nothing. New assumption just dropped. Maybe it's only obtainable in spring, I hope. The cave plants under my shade cloth had grown, meaning the curious trait was now satisfied. Their hunger was not though, so arriving at the stump, I entered to find Grandma and Rhea making something. I wandered over to help. Apparently, they were making violet jelly, graciously handing me once we were done. Enough wasted time though. Purchasing some meatballs, I, instead of feeding my animals at home, descended into the caves looking for a rock salamander. Amazingly, only on the 2nd floor I found one. Taming it, and with the rest of the day ahead of me, I set my sights on a dung beetle. The rock salamander seemed chill with following me through the sandy levels, observing a dung beetle and taming up the next one I found. Today had been a great success, throwing in a line for the fun of it, dropping an item to make space and realizing that was a fish part. Finally, I had something to show Sesame. And just for fun, descending below level 40, I found a cool ice section with a further evolved salamander adapted for the cold environment. It ate seafood, so quickly hooking a cave hopper, I made a bowl and tamed it up. I very triumphantly returned home with 3 new pets in my step. Look, if I turn around, I can even make them do spins and stuff. Isn't that cool? It's cool, right? The coolness stopped there though. I needed 2 new pen types, and returning to the stump, a tundra pen and desert pen would be $7.50 straight up or $13.50 for the blueprints. Now, of course, every creature deserves a home, and I would be the one to Alright, give me a second to think, actually. Putting my rock salamander in with my mushroom fella, I planted some trees to appease his trait before deciding that the ice salamander would wait, and returning to the stump, I purchased a desert pen blueprint, crafted one, placed it down, and put in my dung beetle. Uh-oh, this was when disaster struck. I had forgotten completely about my strictly platonic hangout with Ira. Sprinting over to the waterfall, I was relieved to see she hadn't made it yet, until I realized I'd gone to the wrong place. Now more than an hour late, I sprinted down through the town, arriving huffing at the lake to see her waiting. She's just chill like that though, and forgave me. Together we watched the water, chatted by the campfire, and finally went on a float in the river. Lads, it's really no biggie that I was late, okay? It's strictly platonic, okay? Alright? Stupid. I'm so stupid. How could I forget? At this point, I was feeling a little bad for the ice salamander, so sadly saying goodbye to my funds, I caved in and bought the tundra pen blueprint. I now had 159 gold and no income thanks to my lack of food bowls. It is not looking good for Red TM Incorporated. Well, they do say buy when it's low, so doubling down, I arrived at the mines and descended to the icy levels. I was here to collect ice cubes for tundra pens, and I was accompanied by my dog as its perk gained an extra initial heart upon taming anything. I gathered a satisfactory amount of cubes and tamed up another salamander before finally returning when my energy bar hit 0. Spending some time rearranging the pens. Remembering about the hot spring, I made my way over, sunk until I was rejuvenated, taking advantage of my time here by chopping some birch tree saplings so I could fulfill any creature with the shelter trait. I also made an oopsie that day in feeding my salamanders, then accidentally picking the carrot that was placed there to appease the curious trait, which is very annoying. It's fine though, as the fish part had returned to my memory. Taking a walk down, I picked some berries and entered the store, showing it to the cat. He instructed me how to use the origin machine, spinning the part around until I knew how to craft nutty bait, and by using it I could complete a fish research. Alright, I thought there's probably only a couple of these, so reading it was in the day and in any season I threw in my line. Didn't catch it, so reading harder, I realized it was only in the sandy caves. Worried about the widening scope of fish research, I descended, chopping rocks until I found a body of water and casting in a line. Here I sat until I caught my very first cave fish, the cactus puffer. I needed 2 though, so fishing until morning, I unfortunately didn't get another bite. This was probably a one-off occurrence, I thought, ignorantly. Little did I know. Big day was the 25th. You see, I managed to complete the ice salamander research, the rock salamander research, and the dung beetle research on the same day. So I was in a great mood, heading down to the archive and handing everything in. But then I remembered I was not about to be bested by a cactus-shaped fish. Returning to the sandy depths, I descended until I found a small body of water, casting out my rod and quickly enough catching the twat. This completed the research, so heading back down to the archive, I made a scary realization. The fish was not a small task. In fact, I had effectively added 33% to my workload. Crawl forwards, I guess, waiting until night, then wandering out looking for a raccoon to tame. Observing one, I hoped it would be social, and my prayers were answered. This was perfect. Also finding a chest mimic, I attempted to tame it, but lacking meat bowls, I quickly gave up. Also remembering about the dog perk, I returned to pick him up, heading out once again, deciding that a little pen mate for my raccoon wouldn't be too bad, and miraculously, the first tame also turned out to be social. A great day for Red TM. Learning from my past mistakes, my first plan of action was wandering north into this stump and purchasing some meat bowls. Keep in mind, my income was near zero. This was a great investment. I was on my way to Sesame's shop to hand in a fish part though when I found something. A duck with gold on its bottom. That's right. A shimmering duck. Taming it quickly, it was a water lover, which wasn't ideal, but I'd make it work. Researching the parts I returned, housing my new money maker, and counting my 3 shimmers in total. And the new fish research had invigorated me to descend once again, but I quickly realized the elevator was out of power. Hurrying home, I made some mana cells, but realizing it was too late now, I instead decided it was a good time to tame a mimic, with only 2 days left of fall. This was when something miraculous happened. I found a shimmering raccoon. Unfortunately, a fruit lover, but nonetheless, my luck was incomparable. The next morning, my plan was very much the same. Descending into the sandy section, I found myself a nice piece of water and threw in my cast. Quickly enough, I caught one, but then the very next throw, this happened. As you can see, I didn't have any opportunity to catch it as it goes around, the timer expires before I'm given any means to land it at all. I dubbed this the impossible catch, and as I continued fishing, I thought it would be a one-off occurrence. Little did I know. Anyways, the research was complete, so arriving at the archive, I handed it in, getting a nice hat in return, and realizing I needed to complete 2 job requests for a rank up, I accepted the easiest pair. Step 1 was grabbing some spook root, which I handed over to Theo, and step 2 was... Wait a minute. Theo sells tree resin and I can build stuff like a dormancy barn? Seems interesting, but Loki, I'm not feeding my animals already, so... Step 2 was handing over some bugs to Tegan the doctor, returning to the archive where I accepted my rank up reward of a preserver, along with access to the showcase area. If I placed a preserved item here, for the next week it would go up 20% in price. I smell profit. My main goal the next day was gold for some reason, so descending again, I fought against the cold, searching for the elusive material. Wait a minute, let me check my research. Yeah, I had found a shimmering ice salamander. The only issue was that I didn't have any means to catch one. Saying a pitiful goodbye to my profits, I continued to descend, finding a couple of nodes, but more excitedly, I came across a second ice creature, a little roll rat looking fella. I observed it, but needing to, I unfortunately had to leave, returning home as the first snow of the winter began to fall. And just like that, it was the final season of my first year in Shimmerbrook. Hyped to see new fauna, I immediately began research on a blue cabbage, picked another pink cabbage, which I also began researching, ignoring all the snow rabbits until I came across a puffin. There are of course more things to see though, so promising to return, I foraged some kohlrabi seeds, wandering through town, clearing out the mushroom forest, before eventually returning to observe the strange bird. It unsurprisingly wanted seafood, so I did a little fishing, quickly enough taming it up. Remembering only now about my dog's perk, I returned to pick it up, and with 2 followers I caught some more fish and tamed another puffin, striking gold as they were both water enthusiasts. Placing their new pen next to the pond, I was happy to have... Oh, I'd made the wrong pen. Down massive in terms of resources, I begrudgingly made them a tundra pen and fed them. New issue just dropped. I was not going to tolerate this massive chest mess any longer. First though, I needed to plant the winter seed, so reading my research, I needed acidic soil for the green cabbage, so heading to the blacksmith, I met Kip Mail in the square. He said he lost a very important piece of mail near the caravan, and oh my, I'd get half-eaten corn cup if I gave it back to him. Excited to receive this prize, I gave the blacksmith a visit and purchased some sulfur, making the correct fertilizer and planting the seeds above my water. The pink cabbage was a little easier, only needing a sun lamp, but none of this was important. Half-eaten corn cup, here I come. Descending into the gardens area, I visited the caravan to see it was closed. My presumption was that I could collect it once he opened, so chatting with Ira, I left confidently. Little did I know. Okay, winter research was going, which left me to lock in. Starting by clearing some land, I ran out of energy, walked over to the hot spring to rejuvenate. I got barely anything done though, so going to town, I basically bankrupted myself on strength potions, taking one and continuing work on emptying a large space. Mostly this area was made for the massive expansion planned in the spring, but also to collect wood in preparation to organize my items and double my storage capacity. I worked on this until the dead of night, starting on the northeastern corner of my land, only heading to bed at 2:30 in the morning. My grind though had paid off. I had a bunch of logs to create chests, but remembering something, I'd visited Theo's, waiting for him to finish chopping this tree and asked about a wood saw. Something else caught my eye though, a storage shed for only 2,000 gold. This was exactly what I needed, and with a new goal of obtaining one, I exited, selling a large portion of my fish and flowers I had in storage. Job requests also paid relatively well, so accepting a couple of them. I found Yan Yan outside and gave her a cabbage. She was not very pleased. The requests consisted of some fish for Lisa, who promised me some cooking utensils, and a gem for Zuri. Slightly closer now, I fished for profit, fed my puffins, and watered the crops. Fingers crossed, I opened my receipt for the night and saw I had made easily more than 2 grand. Lisa didn't break her promise and sent me some utensils, and there was a bunch of other people just sending me food. I wonder what the occasion is. Anyways, at long last, my puffer research was complete, but ignoring that for now, I cleared ample space on my farm, wandered to Theo's, and ordered my first new building, a storage shed. Exciting times for the Red TM channel. Still needing wood though, I spent the morning clearing the northern area of my farm, heading out to forage when I finally acknowledged the snow bunny's existence and tamed it easily. I wanted them to be curious though, so heading on further, I continued to tame them, unfortunately never finding one that held my desired trait. I'll have to live with veggie lover, I guess, as it turned out beggars cannot be choosers, and I realized I didn't even have enough ice cubes for a new tundra pen in the first place. I didn't even have the time to descend and collect more, so I just cut some birch trees for the good leaf, making quality fertilizer with it and planting down the third winter plant, winter squash. Some anonymous person had sent me a beverage. I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole. Anyways, new day, new me, and it was ice cube time. I headed over to the mines, heading as deep as the elevator would go, and began work on collecting as many ice cubes as possible, ignoring any other ores that would waste my energy. Quickly running out anyways, I left with a suitable amount and crafted up my bunnies at home. Wandering to the archive, I handed in my puffin research, spending the remainder of the day foraging about. I'm locked in, by the way. In fall I was geeked, okay? Now I'm locked in. To prove my point, I completed watering, downed another strength potion, and got to work clearing the entire top half of my farm. Taking a quick hot spring break to soothe my joints, I got straight back to it. This space would be strictly for cultivating crops, and I imagined a massive field of garlic here that would feed my animals for centuries. It was super empty by nightfall, and I could happily put away the plethora of wood I had collected. Theo was working hard on my farm. Also, pink cabbage, or angel's blush, or whatever, had now been completed, so wandering down, I handed in the scroll, but the 37 new seeds being too good of a deal, I placed down some sun lamps and planted them all. I guess the great plantation would begin in winter. At this point, I also realized I'd been neglecting getting to know the villagers quite a lot, so hoping to change that, I headed into town to hand out some flowers. Completely incidentally, stumbling across one of Yan Yan's favorite gifts, the sunflower. That was pretty satisfying, so my goal now to find loved gifts, I handed Theo a piece of hardwood, which I don't think he liked very much, and handed a feather to Rhea, which I don't think she liked that much. It seems I have no idea what I was doing. There was though only one more day until my shed was fully completed, so before I could be consumed by organizing my chests, I began searching for loved gifts again, while towing 3 nice animals behind me. I gave a bug to Tegan the doctor, which had a decent reaction but nothing game-changing, then a sapphire to Sui the rock enthusiast, which miraculously hit as a loved gift. I might actually be incredibly intelligent, handing a fabric to Ira as she makes rugs, which she also loved. Wow, I cannot stop winning. I also talked with Rhea while towing a chicken, outing a response. Apparently, I'd found her favorite animal. Wondering what benefits that information had, I gave Yan Yan a blueberry, an unfortunate miss, then just randomly giving Valley a starburst. She exclaimed that she loved it. What kind of luck is that? Extremely happy with the progress I had made today, I had a short chat with Leo, realizing the dog that was following me was his favorite animal. Truly a great day to be a Red TM subscriber. The shed was finally complete, a massive area that I could use to store so many items. I was extremely excited. Greetings. I'd love if you came to visit my place sometime. I'm usually there in the morning from Ira. Oh my goodness. Shed who, to be honest? Wait, okay, I gotta calm down. Quickly grabbing a bunch of woolen sticks, I got to work spinning some thread, using this thread to weave some fabric, only because I'm such a great platonic friend. I sprinted over incredibly calmly and nonchalantly, arriving to realize she only meant Mondays and Tuesdays. Truly a sad moment in time. While returning, I found a cool telescope area in the archive, heading all the way home and using the saw I bought from Theo, which basically just gave extra planks for the cost to make more chests, placing them inside the shed and organizing everything. There was still lots to do, but for now my snow bunny research was complete. Watering also had to be completed, but as soon as I was done, I got right back to work organizing. Finally, by around mid-afternoon, I'd cleared out all the chests outside and completed the interior of the shed, only needing signs now to show what row held what. I arrived at Theo's store to find it empty. Well, now that I had the rest of my day to myself, I carefully collected all the products my animals had produced and put them away in the correct chests. I was very happy and very organized. Not only me though, it seems Remus had sent me garlic bread in the morning. Thank you, Remus, for your garlic bread. Putting it away, I collected my green cabbage, whose research I had completed, watering the Angel's Blush farm and wandering down to hand in the scrolls. In return, I was rewarded with a mana cell, and my luck didn't stop there. Selling some extra flowers I had lying around, I spent some time foraging and waiting for the great spring transformation, when I ran into the elusive, shimmering puffin. Quickly catching a fish and making a bowl, I tamed it up, naming it Gobbler, and bringing the lad home. Alright, today while watering, I formulated a general plan. First, I grabbed some iron ore and made my way to the blacksmith's, ordering an upgrade to my axe. Wandering north this time, I said hello to Theo, purchasing the wood sign recipe, crafting a bunch at the sawmill, and placed one in front of each row of chests. I then attempted to place an item on the sign, and then my game crashed. Very sad. So I woke up again, grabbed the iron again, upgraded my axe again, bought the recipe again, made the signs again, and placed them down again, this time being very careful in placing the items inside, eventually making a very beautiful line of signs. My storage situation was officially healed, and I was more than happy to spend the night clearing even more space in preparation for the spring. I remembered something on the 14th of winter. There was more puzzles in the main cave that I was yet to complete. Giving it a little visit, I noted what I needed for the first one, coming back home and dragging a bunch of animals into the mines to complete the second riddle, rewarding me with an increased follower count emblem. A new puzzle had also opened itself up, which consisted of 7 different prisms, each a different color, each requiring an item. Okay, hear me out. I just need to find an item that represents each color. Digging through my chests, I returned to the cave, sporting a range of the spectrum, placing them inside and... Yep, I was completely incorrect. The next morning though, the fruits of my labor were ready for harvest, or should I say, the vegetables of my labor. Harvesting them all and completing my winter squash research along the way, I decided a massive expansion was already necessary. Wandering down to the general store where I bought a bunch of sun lamps, placing them in 2 rows on my farm and carefully planting 96 Angel's Blush seeds. These would truly bring prosperity back to this farm. For now though, all it was bringing was a large loss in energy. Still watering it all, I decided that maybe mana potions was the answer to the riddle. Entering town to see the potion store was closed. I could just make some my own, so picking up my iron axe, I gathered some of the key ingredients and made my way to the mines. Using the magic forge here, I made 4 in total, carefully placing them in the prisms and... watching as nothing happened. Alright, fairly certain that was not the correct answer. I thought maybe each color of gemstone might work, deciding to spend a little time in the zone below ice, but after almost passing out due to the heat, I quickly made my exit. My hypothesis still needing to be checked, so picking up all my gemstones back at home, I made my return, placing them in, but realizing that I was missing the orange gemstone, presumably only able to be found in the deep, scathing hot caves. To prepare for the perilous journey to gather some, I first visited Tegan's, where I read the cool potions needed an ice chunk to be purchased. These would be compulsory to drink, so purchasing some strength potions for now, I made my way back to the cave, exploring the ice section looking for ice chunks. Now, my current presumption was that the roll rat looking fellas dropped them when they were happy, so finding one, I observed that they ate insects only, which I did not have on hand. Still, I did have some time in the day, so arriving back at base, I grabbed the appropriate food bowl and descended again, searching for the creature again. 13 floors in, I spotted my first one, quickly taming it, giving it a suitable home and feeding it. Also, do you remember the very first cave that I never completed? Well, grabbing a smooth pebble, produce from my salamander, I was pretty sure that I had figured out the riddle. It fit perfectly inside the hole, but nothing happened. Well, hoping I simply needed more before revealing whatever was past this cave, I began feeding my rock salamander again. Annoyingly enough, meat was the only thing he ate, and not having any, I was forced to bring my various goods down to the general store. Made a quick buck, which I brought up to the stump and handed over entirely just for a few bowls. It was hopefully worth whatever secret that that cave held, throwing even more stuff in the shipping bin for tool upgrade funds, then wandering downwards with my completed research to submit it. While I was here, I also accepted 2 requests and completed them by handing a gemstone to Zuri and 10 copper ores to Tsui, who I found in the mines. It was a big day though. The icy roll rat was happy enough to give me not an ice chunk. It seems my presumption was incorrect. Nevertheless, crawl forwards, they say, gathering a bunch of fungus from my chests and selling them at the general store to fund a hammer upgrade. I also picked up some gold, walked down to the blacksmith to find him just leaving. Well, on the bright side, I read all of my research and concluded that the ice salamander actually produced the ice chunks, feeding them both in anticipation. Alright, my current stance was simply waiting for the salamanders, the ice ones for the orange gem, and the rock one for the cave riddle. Finishing up watering the massive crop above my home, I headed down confidently to sell some more stuff and finally order my golden hammer. The consequences being I'm now down incredibly poor, and the only accessible food for the ice salamanders being fish. I was stuck here for a while. After securing a satisfactory amount, I was dismayed to realize the iron axe still couldn't break the large logs. Nonetheless, working hard to clear my farm and bathing whenever it was required. It was in fact another big day today. Fishing to feed my ice salamanders, I wandered up to see all of my angel's blushes were grown, harvesting them and receiving a very modest 250 vegetables. Replanting them all and watering again, I, still having time to kill, grabbed some gifts including the loved ones I knew of, wandering into town to gift everyone in the archive, before remembering suddenly about Kip's lost mail. Saying hello to the caravan man, there was no lost mail in sight. Right, maybe it just fell here somewhere, so I half-heartedly scattered the perimeter. There's just no way. Oh. Alright, so I was here the whole time, and I didn't have to wait for anything. Handing out more gifts in the general store and in Tegan's shop, I gave Kip the letter, and finally received the prized half-eaten corn cup. Okay, one more day until both salamanders gave me their respective bowls. I fed everyone well and watered the massive crop, wandering up to the stump and purchasing more meatballs, spending the rest of the day clearing some space to the left of my pen and relaxing in the hot spring, but finally the day had come. Both my rock salamander and my ice salamander gave me their produce, and with them in hand, I raced to the blacksmith, picking up my new golden hammer. I was fully prepared. Alright, step 1. After completing some random foraging, I made my way down to the first discovered cave, entering slowly and placing in the smooth pebble. Before my very eyes, a door slid open on the back wall, revealing a large open room, and sitting in the middle was my third artifact. New salamanders start with 1 extra bond. Okay, completely useless, but still one step closer to opening the massive door in the main mine. I decided though that tomorrow would be the day I descended for the orange gem. For now, wandering downwards to submit 1 piece of research, returning to my home and picking up some fish parts. I took the hike all the way down to Sesame's store when I ran into my new shimmering puffin, quickly taming it up. Back to studying the fish bits, I guess. Reading through until I found one that was available during the winter, but I didn't have the right bait, so I just fished normally. Today was the day of a festival, apparently. The cave dive would be postponed once again. Tending to all my animals and watering all my crops, I made my way downwards and entered the garden, chatting with everyone in attendance and realizing it was centered around a competitive snowball fight. Well, I have no choice but to win. Starting with a practice, I need to hit the opponent's target using the right amount of power, the further ones being worth more. Now beginning to practice with villagers, I knew my skills must be honed if I were to win. I also realized I could hit the enemy for 1 point per snowball, easily defeating opponent after opponent. I finally decided I would participate in the tournament. The grand final ended up being me against Sui, the best player I had fought thus far, expertly hitting his further targets and spamming to hit him when he got close. The timer finished with me winning overall. Collecting the 2 trophies, I returned home and placed them down. Right though, today was for certain the day. I excitedly watered all my crops, grabbed the ice blocks for the potions, and made my way into town. Stopping for a quick chat with Yan Yan, where she told me about an illness that she had. That's quite sad. And also served as an ominous omen as the potion store was closed, postponing the cave dive 1 more day. Well, plan 2 involved arriving at Sesame's store to purchase the recipe for berry bait, returning home and crafting some before reading over my notes and realizing my target was only catchable during the day. Big play from me. I spend the day clearing some more space. Kip had sent me a buttered corn recipe the subsequent day, making the mail slightly more worth it. Nonetheless, today was surely the day, quickly watering all my crops, heading into town and purchasing 7 cool potions, arriving at the mine, downing 1 and descending. Immediately, I began research on the frog and dark root, but primarily searching for the orange gemstone. I was ecstatic to find it so early in my journey. I kept going though, aiming for the bottom of the mines, taking a new cold potion every 3 levels. Continuing down, I collected the best ore, chroma, even finding a larger opening with forges and a stone golem whose research I diligently began. Eventually though, I ended up making it to the very bottom, getting a carrot statue as a reward. It was cool, I guess, feeding my ice salamanders in preparation for future endeavors. For now though, I had gotten the final gemstone I needed. Organizing my inventory, I watered the large crop, grabbing the orange gemstone, and excitedly wandered back to the mines, slowly placing in the final orange gem, a piece of stone move, revealing my 4th artifact and arguably the best one, plus 15 max energy, a bit of a game changer, and I was led back to the final riddle until the massive door would open. Not ready yet though, I arrived at the pier and fished until I completed the pillowfish research, heading over to the archive where I chatted with Remus and Sui before handing in my scroll. It was officially the final day of my first year here, and bloody good timing for my angel's blushes to be ready for harvest. Grabbing them all, I allocated some to be sold, wandered into the general store to get some funds to upgrade my axe. There was a flaw in this plan though, that being the blacksmith and it being closed. Well, returning to my farm, it was my last chance to organize everything for the new year, moving pens in accordance to their preferences, and as the first green of spring appeared, I planted a last cave plant. Hooray! It's the new year. I promise this year I'll feed my animals. Maybe. Well, either way, my year was off to a brilliant start as I decided to take up Ira's invitation. Calmly walking down, I arrived at the top archive floor and entered her room. Together, we did some knitting, ending up with a knitted bookmark. Lads, do you think she wants me? Locking in, I foraged around the new spring flora, then forgot to plant them. I also did not want to be watering, so purchasing a bunch of resin from Theo, I ordered an axe upgrade from the blacksmith, returning to create the small beginnings on a monster seed farm. Rearranging further, I strategically planted some cave flora under shade cloths to appease traits, as those lads won't perish as the seasons go by. Fishing to feed my ice salamanders, I headed out again to forage. The beginning of seasons is always a grind. I did have some new fish research though, and not wanting to miss any spring catch, I arrived at Sesame's, put them through the software, and added them to my journal. I spent the afternoon expanding my flower farm further. Now, this spring fish had certainly caught my eye, so heading out again in hopes of completing its research, when miraculously, I ran into my second shimmering chicken. Well, priorities are priorities, completing a fast fish research, then turning around I quickly tamed it, and wistfully dreaming of my future profits, I fished for a further while, completing another research, and was wandering down to hand them in when I ran into a shimmering cat. What on earth is going on? I thought as I tamed it up, audibly gasping when I realized it was social. A great day for Red TM. Arriving at the archive and handing in all the papers, I noticed Spring only had one more to offer, so quickly fishing up a sparkle fish piece secured, walking over to Sesame's to examine it, locking in and determining to complete all 3 fish research today, I cast away, eventually managing to do exactly that. I'm truly a force to be reckoned with. Unfortunately, the archive was closed. Returning early the following sunrise, I handed in my research, fully completing the spring fish section. A little free time on my hands now, I decided to visit the Great Door, where I only needed one more artifact before it would open for me. And in the meantime, I wanted cave fish. Securing a quick part from the shallows of the mines, I ran over to Sesame and examined it, then ready to research, descended back into the cave. Now, I only had a limited amount of the appropriate bait, but as long as I didn't hook a bunch of twats named cave hoppers, I should be fine. It all got eaten by these twats named cave hoppers. Maybe it's a one-off thing. Little did I know. The first flower harvest was already here, so happily picking them all, I began on my itinerary for the day. First, I fed my ice salamanders, then headed into town to collect my new golden axe. Using it, I would chop the great logs, which helped to clear some space for further organization of my pens. Many creatures were also greedy or curious, and needing more plants to appease them, I crafted up another shade cloth and planted a bunch of cave flora underneath. Picking the rest of the flowers the following morning, I decided that planting chamomile instead would be more efficient. Making a bunch of seeds and along with some sun lamps to keep them alive, I planted 27 of the flowers. Garlic would also come soon, but for now, to make the veggie lover animals happy, I planted 8 in a circle, even making another 2 pens for the extra chickens and rabbits that had been evicted in favor of more profitable animals. I completed my peppermint research the following morning, watering everything else, then deciding to begin a new cave fish research project. First though, submitting my peppermint paper, I made my way to the caves, hoping to catch enough fish to call it a day. So I descended and sat there fishing and continued to sit there fishing. Sure, okay, I managed to catch 1 out of the 2 required, but it is genuinely nighttime right now. My inventory is full of garbage and I'm yet to hook it a second time. This could be a one-off occurrence though. Little did I know. Okay, I wanted a gilded gem, the only item between me and opening the great door. First things first though, I wanted sprinklers. Smelting up some rock, I collected it and crafted a magic forge, allowing me to craft mana cells from home. Crafting 3 up, I used them to build 2 basic sprinklers, which I placed down. Alright, back to business though. Bringing a bunch of angel's blushes to the general store, I sold them. Chatted with Sui, who told me that gilded gems could be found only at the bottom of the mines. Okay, using my newly acquired funds, I purchased some cold potions from Tegan, deciding that descending today would be a waste of time. Instead, grabbing some garlic cloves and starting another farm to the west, filling it with vegetables. This would soon expand, so I used my energy on clearing more space. But everybody, it's Gilded Gem Day. First of all, I grabbed my fully grown chamomile, realizing they didn't actually need the sun lamps, turning all the flowers into seeds and replanting. All done, it's time to descend. Quickly finding another frog and taming it, I gathered all the gold and sulfur that I could, observing and foraging Dancer's heel seeds along the way, but upon arriving at the bottom of the mines, I realized that I didn't find a single gilded gem. Although when I did exit, there was a glimmering moth outside, and having no idea what it was, I couldn't tame it as I was yet to observe it twice. Taking care of my animals and watering all my crops, I quickly made some pebble fertilizer and used it to plant the hot cave flora Dancer's heels. The fact that I hadn't found a gilded gem though had got me thinking. Heading back to the general store, I sold some goods as my new presumption was that the trowel actually dug up gilded gems. Arriving at the blacksmith to upgrade it, it was closed. Right, I guess I can spend the day making some veggie bait, returning to the mines, and oh my goodness, it was another glimmering moth. Taming it up hastily, I wondered why I'd never seen this animal before, hopping into the lower mine levels to complete the moss fish research. Good news though, my first crop of garlic was ready for harvest the next morning, and replanting them, I crafted up a whole new pen just for my glimmering moth. It hit me then how big of a farm I actually had, and passionate in feeding them all, I expanded my garlic farm further and watered everything. There was also a festival on today, the one that broke last time I was here. Today though, Valley seemed to be chatting as normal, writing up my poem, a banger compared to last year. I platonically cast my vote and watched the cherry blossoms float by. Truly serene. Kip ended up winning though. I did not contribute to such an atrocity. Returning home, I watered more and even expanded my garlic farm. The following morning, my chamomile was done again, and not wasting this opportunity, I expanded the reach all the way down. Hopefully this will feed my chickens for the next year. Anyways, trowel upgrade time. I was a little confused when the blacksmith couldn't do it for me, but remembering I had bought it from Alfie, I checked in his store and an upgrade was on sale. So returning to my home, I grabbed the correct resources, upgrading to copper, and there was no time delay, so I went straight to iron. I was not done there though. Returning home again to get some gold and chroma, I realized I couldn't afford it and headed to the general store. Here though, I found Yan Yan sick, staying by her side until Tegan the doctor appeared. All seemed to be well, so I locked back in, selling some goods for emergency funds and upgrading my trowel to gold, then finally to chroma. The best shovel in my possession now, I spent the night watering all the damn crops. This was also what I spent the entire next morning doing, deciding that this was a bloody waste of time with a copper watering can, selling more stuff and ordering an upgrade for it. While I was here, I handed in the fish research, headed left into Sesame Store where I investigated even more fish bits, deciding on 1 cave fish to aim for today and descended excitedly. So I fished and I fished and I fished and I did not complete the research, and I won't complain about it either because I will a lot later in the video. I fell asleep trying to get home. At the very least, Yan Yan met me at the door thanking me for helping her while she was sick. Yes, very wholesome, but I would have preferred a monetary incentive. Harvesting and replanting all my garlic, I noticed my moth was happy, completing my research. I was interested in what bookshelf this would go in, but for now I had a whole lot of watering to do. Today was also a big day as feeding my animals finally commenced. Using wood planks, I crafted a load of bowls, filling them with garlic and handing them out to only the most profitable pens. Each one with an auto feeder now had around 25 days of food in the backlog. Alright, chickens may also be eating soon, as all my chamomile was ready for harvest. I replanted, put the rest in the shiv, and put away almost 200 seeds in profit. Now this did mean only around 100 bowls, so much work still to be done. I tried to check the price of a better sprinkler at the tinkerer, but he was closed. While I was here though, I picked up my new iron watering can, excited to see what it could do. Apparently, it just waters slightly faster now. Alright, completing the watering, I also completed the cat flower research, heading down to hand it in and giving gifts in the general store and in the tavern. Finding a darts game here, I tried my luck, eventually getting the bull's eye. No monetary inducement though. I went home. The next morning, I entered Alfie's awesome automations and purchased a golden sprinkler blueprint. Alright, so I need some smelted gold and some mana cells, so after securing both, I crafted up 4 of them, placing them in a line through the chamomile farm and into the garlic farm. You see, this was actually a compulsory step if I were to have any time to search for the gilded gem. Hand watering everything every day for the final time, I wandered downwards to submit some research, getting a sun lamp in return, and realizing that the glimmer moth was in a special creatures tab. Very interesting. I wondered where the rest of the special creatures could be found. But finally, sweet rain was falling upon the earth, meaning no watering to be done, meaning it was time to get the gilded gem. Waiting outside Tegan's store for her to open, I headed in, purchased a strength potion, and descended. Still having 4 cold potions from last time, I wasn't worried, but I was disappointed when I got a table and a worm instead of a gilded gem from using the trowel. I searched for the entire day, but in the end, I didn't find one. Alright, that was admittedly a large failure. Even Sui refused to talk about the gem anymore. And like, believe me, I asked him a lot of times. I need to make sure I haven't missed anything. Still though, with little preparations complete for my next cave dive, I simply harvested all my crops, replanting them, and crafted up a bunch of food. Soon, I would be rich enough to descend whenever, but that time was not now. You might be wondering, actually, why I was so adamant on finding this gilded gem in the first place. And you see, this room was actually the final puzzle until the massive door would open, and reading up on each item, I grabbed a few and placed them down. Realizing I had some of the rest, I placed them as well, only leaving the last pedestal noted, the gilded gem. It was the only item between me and the door, but it was too late for descending today, so I visited the mushroom forest instead and cleared it out. My main issue currently was money, as I needed around 1500 each time I descended for the strength and cold potions. I had less than 1500, so in the meantime, I decided to enter the mines not for the gem, but to complete that one annoying fish research. This being the rare occasion, I was able to finish with little obstacle. I got an achievement the next morning saying 25 of my creatures had their traits met. Everyone is so happy despite not being fed in half a year. Alright, I'm taking active steps to change it though. I harvested up and replanted all my crops, wandering into town and into the tavern, where I was surprised to see a new person had moved in. They were Lisa's younger sister, Layla, here to work in the tavern because she didn't want to go to the academy anymore or something. Buying a drink, I left. Wanting to check an auto collector's price, I entered the Tinkerer's, but it was closed. Alright, next up, Yan Yan had mumbled something about black apple juice when she was sick, so handing some over. She absolutely loved it. Her second loved gift. I may be the discoverer. I had a little trouble though, as I needed a soggy fish piece or something from the caves to complete a research, which I couldn't end up getting. Finally though, my dancer's heels were harvestable, and their research complete. No time for that though. I watered up and wandered down to the mines for the fish piece, when I ran into another shimmering cat, quickly taming it and bringing it back home. It was the second shimmering cat from my collection, unfortunately kicking out Nob in the process. I felt bad though, so making a new pet for my Nobby, I headed back out looking for the fish part, and lamentably every single sparkle just gave me a blue claw. Planting some birch trees the following sunrise, I was, to reiterate, just waiting for money for another cave run for the gilded gem. I noticed I was yet to complete the dark root research too, so grabbing some wool and such, I wove 2 pieces of cloth, crafting one into a shade cloth, and planning to sow dark roots underneath. I had forgotten to provide fertilizer though, so making some in my composter, I noticed I had almost enough money now to warrant a trip to the mines. In the meantime, I planted my dark root, handing in my dancer's heels research, and seeing that I had a bunch of cave produce still to write about, I made them my initial goal, manufacturing some mana cells to continue the elevator's service, but upon wandering upwards, I ran into the elusive shimmering fox, excitedly taming it, then descending anyways as I'm locked in, beginning research on the cactus and desert coral, while continuing to fish at every sparkles in order to complete fish observations too. I ended my run finding and researching the grabulb. Today was a special day. I don't know why, but it was written in my notes. The first thing I did was give my new fox a home, feeding it well and harvesting the very last crop of garlic and chamomile. They had served me well, and I could hopefully feed my animals for the coming year. I planned to return to the cave with a short stop off at the archive to hand Era my extra fabric, which I totally made completely accidentally with no initial intention of gifting it to her, returning straight to the cave where I began research on a pink fern and ran into my third desert animal for the first time, a small rabbit character. I began observing it, noting down its hiding technique and taming it before coming across something massive, a diamond shining trowel spot, and digging it revealed a diamond ladder. Descending excitedly, I was met by a level filled with massive crystals, but nothing I could actually gather. This is very unfortunate. I'd run into some trouble trying to plant cactus and grabulbs though, as they required sandy soil, and I didn't have enough sand for the soil? Well, this was the perfect excuse for me to descend once again into the sandy section, mostly gathering the fine stones, but also observing any plants that I now required the seeds of. They included both the desert coral and the pink fern, both done when I found a strange statue as well. Number 3 to be exact, my collection is growing. Oh my, the earth is once again blessed by the clouds dying hydrogen monoxide. My bank account is looking palatable. I can feel that today is the day. Entering Tegan's store, I acquired a reasonable dose of cold potions, returning to the caves to descend into the lava-filled depths. Making sure to fish at every sparkle I found, I checked all the gemstones as I'd never seen a gilded gem, eventually running into a shimmering frog. It was very late now, and with no grub bowl, I locked in, chopped some wood crates to assemble into a bowl, filled it with worms from trowel digging, and managed to tame it. I then passed out in the mines, still no gilded gem. My shimmering frog was looking awfully lucrative though, but without a home, I could not collect any funds. To change this, I made my way to the stump and purchased the cavern pen blueprint, crafting one and housing my frog. At this point, I wanted to start investing in some auto collectors, but heading into town, I realized they were significantly too expensive, instead deciding to plant all 4 desert crops according to their soil preferences. And in the morning, it was the first day of my second summer. Currently though, thanks to these desert crops, I had no space for new research, instead opting to just forage around. During this time, I ran into a golden boar, excitedly taming it, but continuing on my foraging mission, as I had many summer plants yet to research. This was when the unexpected happened. I ran into yet another golden boar, amazingly taming it up and returning home with 2 massive moneymakers in my wake. There is still some time to wait until my research slots would be opened again, so for now, in preparation for whatever, I decided to clear some land, so I cleared some land. My energy ran out, so I cleared some land. Yeah, not much happening today, so slightly more action the next day. This consisted of completing the small rabbit research, heading into town and buying 10 cool potions. Surely the gilded gem would be mine, sometime in the future at least. For now, I realized it was the general store co-owner Z's birthday, so grabbing a flower, I handed it over. What a great guy I am. Entering the archive, I saw I had completed none of the 3 summer fish observations, and decided today I would change that. My eyes peeled for any sparkles. I would fish up any I spotted, eventually finding enough to be satisfied and returning home, promptly forgetting my goal and placing the cooking utensils Lisa had given me. I looked through the recipes I'd collected during my time, one in particular catching my eye, that being the sparkling dew, which increased my chance of finding a gilded gem by 10%. Literally the perfect beverage for my current situation. Unfortunately, it required some sparkling water. Okay, I'm sure the tavern would have some, so I headed over, but I was incorrect. It was Wednesday, so the caravan was worth a shot, and no luck. Maybe the general store would just suddenly start stocking it. Yep, okay. I was grasping at straws now. With no other choice, I was forced to give up temporarily. Some hope was restored though when I was heading around foraging the next morning, saying hello to Yan Yan and Layla, wandering to Lakeside, when I ran across a strange new creature, a blue blob who would periodically turn into a sparkling water? Am I hallucinating? Luckily, my mouse research was complete, so beginning research on this blob fella, I ran home to grab the appropriate food, returning and taming him. Holding on to the inkling this lad would provide the sparkling water, I pulled some strings to assure the best pen on the farm for the earliest possible production. Finding the mouse research in my inventory, I wandered down to submit it, in return getting 5 drills, which would effectively bring me down 1 level in the mines. They needed mana though, so possibly useless. Anyways, my farm was now kind of producing a profit, so a house upgrade was on my radar, entering Greydor's home to find him taking care of his pet rock salamander. Very wholesome. The store was closed though. Wondering maybe the carpenter had something interesting, I visited, but nothing new had appeared in the catalog. Desperate to spend my money now, I ran down to Alfie's shop, just buying a gold sun lamp recipe for some reason, but noticing it needed glass, I finally decided that today would be dedicated to gathering sand. Fed glass for sun lamps, which I didn't need. Arriving at the sandy levels, I searched and I searched, eventually running dry on energy, but with a solid 30 now, I called it a day, arriving home to smelt them into the required resource. Now, I've said it before, but today really was the day. You see, the blob was happy enough to give me the produce of a sparkling water. Oh my goodness, this is huge if true. Quickly chefing up the sparkling dew with my cold potions and strength potions in hand, I made the, hopefully, final descent into the lava areas of the mines. This icon given to me by the sparkling drink shows what I was looking for, clearing 10 solid levels without finding a thing, but eventually on level 73, I came across the rarest stone in the game, the gilded gem. Ecstatic that I had actually gotten it, I continued down a little, finding another stone golem, and with the blob research complete, I could continued to observe it, realizing it ate anything, but I didn't have any bowls on me and returned home. This setback was nothing compared to what I had just achieved. The 7th of summer was a jolly day. Tending to my animals on my farm, I picked up the one and only gilded gem and ran up to the mines. Excited for what was to come, I placed it down and nothing happened. Alright, maybe one of my other picks was incorrect. Taking it before returning home, quickly finding some suitable substitutes and placing them instead to still nothing happening. Okay, maybe the fish was wrong replacing it. Finally, a compartment opened, revealing the final artifact, a chance to drop double mana cells. Another room had also appeared, containing what seemed to be an old home, a tent, some writings, and a short diary. It described this maze of caves as being the final barrier for protecting the knowledge of the prism, which was destroyed thanks to the king's greed. More importantly though, the Great Door. I had obtained all the necessary artifacts, and yet it still refused to open for me. There were 4 pedestals, so placing some random items on them, no luck, obviously. I then had the bright idea of trying mana cells, all of different strengths, and it seemed I was spot on, just needing 4 of the strongest cells. Apparently, Valley had heard of my efforts and wanted to check out the campsite with me, so before I headed over, I quickly completed the desert coral research, then making some mana cells. Unfortunately, they were all significantly too weak. A little time left, I remembered about the gold sun lamps and crafted 4 of them, placing them next to my sprinklers. They were truly a sight to behold, hoeing all the ground around them and planting my very first completely automatic garlic farm. No time for celebration though. Valley might have some valuable insight. Arriving at the mines, she had a look around the newly discovered area, then coming to the same conclusion, shared with me the recipe of the potent mana cell, the strongest kind. Scared of what crafting some would entail, I spent the day observing tomatoes and foraging for their seeds, returning home to craft the correct fertilizer and finally plant them. The next day though, I was ready to accept the truth. Heading into town, I chatted with Zuri about some history, checked the crafting recipe to realize that I needed 3 quality mana cells. The only way of getting said mana cells was gilded gems. I needed 3 more gilded gems. A little dumbfounded by this discovery, I handed in 4 recently completed research, getting 2 porter chests and a ring in return. Now the porter chests were basically 2 chests that shared the same inventory, but the feeder ring got extra food when using the feed crafter. I found said feed crafter at Alfie's, placing it down and crafting some bowls. It was quick and gave me 20% more from the ring. The smell of profit got ever stronger. Stocking up food for the vegetable eaters, I spent the night smelting chroma bars and sand into glass. Microbulbs were finally ready for harvest, which meant another open research slot. Handing in the completed paper, I saw my ever-inflating bank account and was happy enough to spend 1,500 on cold potions, buying 2 more auto feeders while I was at it, and buying more auto collectors while I was at it. Alright, that's enough. All my savings disappearing before my eyes. I placed them all on my farm, marveling at its slow progress towards being completely automatic. Then, remembering about the yet-to-be completed summer fish research, I placed 2 parts for investigation and headed out to fish. The first was a fan of seafood bait in rivers, the easier of the 2, and quickly got caught 3 times, completing my paper on them. The second also loved seafood bait, but this time in the waterfall, and only came out at night. I only managed to complete half of its research. My automatic garlic farm was working great. Harvesting its first batch, I replanted them, beginning another 2 summer plants for research, and wandering out hoping to observe some blueberries and eggplant. Instead though, something insane happened. I found 2 shimmering grass bunnies just chilling in the meadow, sprinting back home to gather some food for them and taming up both. Happy that they would contribute well, I continued on my foraging grind, eventually returning to give them a home, then wandering out again and down to the mines. You see, the fish I completed half of yesterday could only be finished in the sandy mines, which I have not gone to. I misclicked, and now the elevator was out of charge. I'm going to crash out. I ran all the way home to make a mana cell, powered it up, but in the end, I did catch the fish, comprehensively wrapping up the research. And another 2 as my tomatoes finally produced. Wandering down to the archive to submit them both, I'm making some solid progress towards completing every piece of research, but to do that, I started observations on corn, as well as investigating another fish part at Sesame's store. This one was at the lake in summer when it wasn't raining. Today is literally the perfect day, I thought. Ignorantly, I threw in my cast, caught some other garbage before finally hooking one. The issue was how quickly the green bar was running out the thing I needed to fill. Then this happened. I was not given the opportunity to catch it. It took some more random fish and garbage to hook it again, but once again, it just escaped without me receiving a chance to land it. And just like that, night had fallen, removing my odds right down to 0. The worst part? This was just the beginning. Well, luck was more on my side the next day. Tending to my animals and determined not to be bested by a limbless, cold-blooded vertebrae, I returned to the lake and managed to catch all that I needed to finish the research. And just like that, handing it in, all of the summer fish were complete. This was a celebratory moment, and planting an eggplant, I rewarded myself by cooking up a sparkling dew. You know what that means? means I was fully prepared to descend once again, and this time gather 3 gilded gems to open the final massive door. Tomorrow, that is. For now, I completed my dark root research, then wandered down again to hand it in. Submitting, I got a small reward of a gilded gem. I had no idea, but this one research had reduced my workload by 33%, returning home to cook it up with some organic goods, of course yielding the quality mana cell. I also remembered I had been gifted one through the mail a while ago, concluding that my quest had been effectively reduced to a single gilded gem. And that was exactly my goal on the 14th of summer. Tending to my animals, I harvested my second ever automatic garlic crop, replanting, then suddenly receiving the fully bonded 15 animals achievement. A truly wholesome moment, at least for the guy who hadn't fed anyone for almost half a year. I also realized it was Yan Yan's birthday today, so handing her a sunflower, a loved gift of hers, before deciding it was time for me to open this door. Descending into the deepest parts of the mines, I took advantage of my time here and began research on some local flora. Then literally a couple of floors in, I spotted it, the elusive gilded gem and the final piece of the puzzle. Well, I was here already, so continuing my descent, I found a diamond ladder, and hiding below was another gilded gem. My luck was surely depleted now, so returning to the surface, I carefully planted the hot climate flower. And yes, I had claimed other days to be the day, but today was the day all those days aspired to become. It was the day I would open that door, completing the mixing of the final quality mana cell. It doubled thanks to my artifact. Carefully crafting 3 potent cells using sulfur, I excitedly hurried over to the mines. Placing one cell on each pedestal, I took a deep breath and stepped on the heavy opening plate. The door slid open, revealing one last room with what seemed to be a person lying motionless on the floor. Tegan came to their rescue, quickly administering some potions to make sure they would be okay. A few days, she said, before they woke up. Anticipating meeting this mysterious new person, I spent the day foraging for corn. Day 1 of waiting for the survivor to wake up. I fed my animals, who in turn were feeding an ever-expanding bank account. Foraged around for corn as I was yet to complete my paper on it, and realizing the chest mimic had just been ignored, I quickly set it up in a suitable place and fed it. Day 2 of waiting. I harvested the 3rd crop of my brilliant garlic farm and marveled at the large amount of vegetables I had procured. Wandering out to explore the new cave room, I ran into a shimmering wood ram on the way, which was exciting thanks to their large profit margins, returning with a veggie bowl in hand to tame it. Preparing for the next time with a porter chest filled with all types of bowls, I carefully entered the room, hiding behind the door. It was quite simple, a tent and some books lying around. It was evident this person had been hiding here for a very long time. Heading home, I stopped by to check on the patient under intensive care from Tegan, arriving at home where I gave Rib the goat a nice pen before exiting again, searching for corn, which at this point was beginning to piss me off. Day 3 of waiting, this patient was also starting to piss me... Oh... Hello. The person was named Kerr, a worker in the prison before it was destroyed, the center of all knowledge in the old world. They had trapped themselves, hoping to attract a savior by using their mana to bring in a large influx of creatures. So there you go. I had saved them. I'm a great guy. Blah blah. It's time to lock back in. No more mysteries, just the remaining research to be completed. With my creatures tended to, I headed to the carpenters, deciding that I needed a greenhouse at some point in case I missed a season compulsory for a plant's growth. For now though, I picked up some fish bits and researched them, deciding on this one to be my target, and descended into the lava caves. I still had some cold potions left over, so I was safe enough, eventually managing to snag all 3 and completing the paper quickly enough. I had a short break from researching today as it was the ice cream festival. Still making some meaty bait in preparation, I grabbed some maple syrup and ice cubes, wandering over and finally observing the last corn that I needed to. Anyways, using the ice this time, I was able to make frozen icy poles, which may have been better, not sure, giving one to Ira, which she loved. Hopefully she extends this love to other places in her life. Z hated it though, so I just ate the rest myself, reading up on corn when I got home and making some pebble fertilizer. I harvested my 4th garlic crop the next day, and at this point I had grown so much that this old chest could no longer keep up, forcing me to make a whole new chest just for garlic. Still replanting, I tended to my animals and planted my corn, making my return to the lava caves to complete the second fish's research. You must understand that I basically had the entire afternoon and night down here, locating a pond I threw in my line, unprepared for what I was about to experience. Thinking ahead, I had bought easily more than enough bait, which was almost completely wiped out by cave hoppers before I snagged a single research fish. Still, I persevered, managing to catch 2 out of the 3 required, with just enough meaty bait to complete the research. I was then subjected to catching literally 10 random pieces of garbage and fish parts I'd already done the research for, in the end failing to complete the 3 landings I needed. That's just a one-off though, right? I thought. Little did I know. I headed into town the next morning, reading about how to make a meaty burger on the notice board, and after all this time, finally finally buying an upgrade for my backpack in the general store. Completing the eggplant research back at home, I collected my mimic's produce, realizing depressingly that I still needed to find its footprints in the wild. I abandoned it for now, as it was not fall. To end the day on a good note though, I made my way to the mines, only one more fish, a single fish to catch until the research was complete. I threw in my line and fished, and fished, and fished, and fished, and it is literally 9 PM. I've been here for more than 6 hours, and I'm yet to hook it a single time. Everything's good though. I finally hooked the thing and it was impossible to catch. I fell for the old classic, the phantom fish, as the clock struck 2 in the morning and I was forced to leave my spot. I reflected on the almost 11 hours spent on fishing, and okay, this is exactly what I wrote in my notes. Incomprehensible, bro, so bad. I need a reaction time every time too stupid. On the bright side, my sunflora research was complete, but this was no remedy. My op, the cold-blooded vertebrate, was still at large and crafting even more bait thanks to the twat cave hoppers. I returned, taking the 3rd cold potion just for this one fish and threw in my line. I got cave hopper, cave hopper, cave hopper, stick, cave hopper, cave hopper, stick, and finally, the one fish that I'd been searching for since yesterday. Feeling lucky, I descended one more level to find a stone golem, and this time with some bowls available, I tamed it, arriving back on the surface and wandering down to the archive to hand in my well-deserved research papers. I spent the night giving the golem a nice home and some food, as well as feeding my toad again, as I forgot to start the research on the lad in the first place. Alright, hoping that just that fish was the disastrous one, I fed my animals, researching the last hot mines fish part, and headed down quickly, as it could only be caught during the day. Immediately, I hooked it and was served the absolute classic impossible catch. Well, at least it probably won't happen again, and on the second hook, it happened again. Literally impossible. Am I allowed to catch this fish? And just like that, the clock struck 6 in the afternoon. Day was over, and the fish was no longer hookable. Top 10 greatest gaming experiences. Well, I was also here to find frog prints, of which I could not locate any. Alright. At the very least, there was a shimmering water sitting outside when I surfaced, seen as nothing but a sign of apology from the mines. I tamed it, returning home to harvest the 5th crop of garlic and replanting one final time. My stone golem was happy, which makes one of us, I guess, enough for me to complete its research. Returning straight to the mines, I hopped into the elevator to find it was out of power. I have exhausted everything just to catch literally 8 fish. I'm finna explode right here. Still crawl forward if anything, making more mana cells and arriving back to power it up. Drinking my very last cold potion and throwing in the line, hooked and caught the lava puffer. At long last, I had 1 out of the 3 I needed. I proceeded to catch 10 pieces of garbage in a row, even more cave hoppers, and then the day was over. This is certainly not my favorite meal deal. Every cloud has a shiny outline, and I was happy to observe some frog prints, which was at least some kind of progress. Also, the potion store was closed tomorrow, which meant no more cold potions. As such, today is my day off. First, I began a cold flowers research and decided I would spend the day observing them, as well as finding some ice section fish parts, which hopefully would not be reminiscent of the current trauma I was experiencing. I headed down to the cold parts, beginning some lettuce research and fishing at any sparkles I could find. Luck was also on my side today as I descended further, managing to find a shimmering icy roll rat, taming the fella up. At this point, I had also foraged the base bulb seeds, as well as securing another fish part, making me happy enough to return to the surface. Heading to Sesame's first to investigate both of them, finally moving on home to plant the base bulb in the appropriate soil and water it nicely. At long last, the next morning, the frog research was complete, but no time for celebrations. The potion shop was open, so with some ice chunks in hand, I headed to Tegan's and bought a significant amount of cold potions, handing in the research while I was here and receiving some bunny ears? Alright, well, deciding that today would be my second day off, I made a bunch of mana cells, smelting some stone simultaneously so I could craft another magic forge to double my mana cell production. Using my many perfect quality garlic was such a hack here, to the point that when I ran out of the gemstones I was willing to spend, I had created 29 decent strength cells. Alright, change of approach though today. I wouldn't waste a single second on my farm, teleporting right to the mines and descending, maximizing the definition of day to get me this damn fish. I hooked the first one at around 8 in the morning, fighting an annoyingly long, no skill involved, just simply RNG based fight, eventually hooking the final fish I needed from the lava caves, once again winning the fight and landing it. At long last, after so many potions and mana cells, I could leave triumphantly. Quickly completing my farm work, it was a tear-jerking moment when I harvested up my final crop of garlic. Truly heartwarming stuff. I was so glad to wander down to the archive when the sun rose, submitting the stupid lava puffer's research and receiving a statue of a fish in return. I couldn't have asked for anything better. I was in a good mood though, so purchasing a butterfly brooch from the general store, I returned to the archive, and in the spur of the moment, I handed it to Ira, and just like that, she accepted it. My unrequited love was fulfilled. Alright, I was currently geeked. It is time to lock in. Tomorrow would mark the beginning of fall, so for today, I arrived at the mines again and prayed the ice section would be nicer to me before descending. Little did I know. Catching 2 of the frost trout, the fish I was looking for. I had a slight hope I could finish it today, and then I was served 8 cave shrimps in a row. Truly peak video games. Well, it was full, but needing to empty the research slot anyway, I returned to the mines to finish it up real quick. Luck was more on my side this time, and after a load of garbage, I managed to hook it and catch it. While I was here, I wanted some lettuce seeds too though, so continuing my descent, I foraged for some, returning to the surface and planting them, before wandering down to the archive to write a short list on the autumn research I was yet to complete. This included the chest mimic, both fall fish, blueberries, cave creeper, and the moth plant. Deciding that the grave creeper was a good start, I quickly located a chest mimic when night fell, reading its footprints, and completed the research. I felt confident enough in my garlic reserve that I picked some, crafting 2.5 stacks of veggie bowls. On top of this, the extra feeds had allowed the company to start feeding the dogs again, meaning more profit from today forwards. Now, this was a tough decision, but I had abandoned the grave creeper research for now, in favor of blueberries. You see, they only needed acidic fertilizer, so crafting some, I planted them, wandering out in search of sparkles. I had strategically left one research slot for the autumn fish, and upon realizing I'd already investigated both fall fish parts, I began observing one and got fishing. Right, I'm anticipating some easy fishing, I thought, as I was hit once again by the phantom fish forces. But the next was once again impossible. But they say you can overcome anything with enough belief in yourself. So eventually I managed to catch enough and finish my research paper. Today was just another classic day. I tended to my animals, bought a few more fish parts over to Sesame's store, which I investigated closely, chose one to be my victim, and went down to the icy mines to catch it. I managed to snag 2 out of the 3 required, and you may see where this is headed. This pond just stopped providing them for me. Like, did the population run out or something? I hooked 6 cave shrimp in a row, which, speaking from personal experience, is quite migraine inducing. At long last though, my corn research was complete, but knowing the ice fish was a day-only fella, I ran straight back, hoping to catch it before nightfall. Luckily, I managed to finish it super quickly, and now with the day to myself, I made my way to Sesame's shop to mass purchase some bait, as I needed berry bait for my next fish research. Arriving at home and quickly realizing I didn't even need basic bait to craft berry bait. It's alright, all was forgotten when I arrived at the river to find an extremely strange barbecue-shaped creature hanging out in front of Theo's house. It was apparently called a grillix, and I excitedly began its research, throwing in my line too, and expertly catching all of the spookfish I needed within the night. But it was time now to collect what I was owed. So, tending to my animals, I arrived at the archive to hand in my research. In return for my efforts, I got a rug, some potions, and 1 auto feeder. It was better than nothing, but after buying the sun lamp blueprint, a bait press, and the fishing net blueprint from the tinkerer, I just sat around on my farm for a little, making my return to the archive to check my researcher rank. Apparently, I just need to submit 6 preserved items to the showcase area to level up. This seemed easy enough. I just need to craft this preserving machine, smelting up some iron for this exact cause. I manufactured the piece of technology and sat it inside my storage shed. Filling the thing up with mana, I placed inside some goat's milk, receiving the preserved counterpart. Now, I still needed 5 more items to level up, so hastily tending to my animals and regrettably noticing my lettuce had withered because I'd forgotten the kelp fertilizer, I held 5 extra animal produce items and preserved them all for the archive. I would be making extra profit from these, so making them well sold things, and after clearing some space, I remade some kelp fertilizer to help the lettuce reach maturity. Wandering once more down to the Violet Archive, I had a look and noticed I only had 2 more cave fish to catch, like in total, which was a relief to hear. For now though, I remembered about wanting a greenhouse and made my descent into the sandy mines to collect all the sand I needed. I ended up leaving with about half of what was required. My base bulb research was complete. On top of this, my dogs had finally started producing profits for me again, and I thought it was quite an ample time to finally resume my grave creeper observations. Smelting some glass, I headed out looking to forage their seeds. On the way, meeting the caravan man and purchasing all the blueprints he had on sale. Not because I needed them, but because I am incredibly affluent. Unfortunately, this couldn't help me find another grave creeper, so affirming none had spawned, I spent the day in the normal mines, as I had one last fish part not in my possession, and it was found here. Amazingly, I just couldn't stop hooking fish, the only time that it was the most unnecessary. Alright, today would be the day though I finally found the second grave creeper, so walking out determined, I would not stop for anything except for a shimmering duck, which sounded pretty profitable. Taming the lad and continuing on my hunt, ending up in the summit, where I chopped some birch trees and replanted them sustainably. Kept searching in every corner of the map, not even spotting a single stem. Once I had scoured every inch of the land, I begrudgingly returned home, regrettably replacing Splunk the duck to make space for Boo. I did feel bad about this though, so I needed a solution. I had something in mind. Completing my daily forage, I walked to the carpenters, purchasing a load of blueprints because I could, and set my sights on a dormancy barn, the perfect place for Slunk to chill out. I made my return to the farm, sorting out the necessary resources and clearing some space in the top of my land before arriving back at the carpenters. Placing the building in the northwest corner, I continued my money spending spree on an upgrade for my hoe, a visit to Alfie's store where I bought 4 auto collectors and 4 auto feeders, as well as the chroma sprinkler recipe and the chroma sun lamp recipe. My bank account was crying, but my farm was looking magnificent. I spent the remaining sunlight optimizing my farm to make efficient use of this new technology. The following morning proved my point, being significantly easier to tend to my growing collection of animals. Today was also preserved item submission day, so holding them I selfishly hogged all 6 preserved produce slots in the archive. Either way, I leveled up, getting even more max energy and the ability to accept more board requests. Look, that's cool, but why is it so hard to find a damn gravekeeper? There were none around, so slightly lower on my priority list being feed my animals, I got to work drinking a strength potion and chopping trees for wood, for planks, for bowls, coming across another Grillix on my way, observing it and taming it, my third special creature. He had the worker trait, and unable to attend to him right away, I sought a huge amount of new bowls, spammed a ton of food bowls, and carefully split the stacks, feeding everyone fairly. I was truly delighted to see how easy tending my animals now was, crafting a new pen for my Grillix and feeding him well, and dreading the long walk of grave creeper searching, I downed a speed potion to halve the time it would take, and it once again proving to be a failure. I remembered about the final 2 cave fish, descending into the shallow levels and searching for the last soggy fish part, not getting much luck at all before I finally randomly caught it without even sparkles, starting the research and vowing not to leave the mines before I completed the research. This was in fact the rare occasion this turned out well, arriving at the surface and returning home satisfied. The good news continued. My blueberry research was at long last completed the following morning, handing it in and more at the archive, receiving a fish basket, potions, and a new amulet in return. It could have been a sign of good luck, but either way, when I was wandering around half-heartedly looking for grave creepers, I finally located the second one needed for the seeds, foraging some and noting that they needed to be planted during the night. I also felt confident in starting the mothflower research, peeking again in the archive to notice one last cave fish, the rainbow skitter. No idea how to catch it, I purchased a load of speed potions from Tegan's store, collecting my iron hoe from the blacksmith and ordering a golden watering can upgrade. Enough done for today. I relaxed in the tavern, but ever networking, I bought a bunch of beers and drinks to hand out for everyone in attendance. This final cave fish would be mine. The fish part was the first step, so heading to the icy mines, I strategically took a speed potion to equal out the slowing effect. Okay, it didn't work. Nevertheless, I searched and fished for the entire day, almost giving up before finally receiving a rainbow fish piece, surely for the final catch. The day got even better when I arrived at the surface to find a Grillix, which I tamed thanks to the large price of both of its produce. This hypothesis was proven correct the following morning when I completed my Grillix research and threw the produce in the shipping bin. Luck was on my side and the mothflower was significantly easier to observe compared to the cave creeper, allowing me to forage for the seeds. First though, I activated the final cave fish research, realizing it was night only, and in the meantime planted the moth flowers. Then wandering back into town, I bought a bunch of painting supplies from Ming. Locating a suitable place, I also floated out my fish baskets, finally entering the mines and locking in. Okay, I was gonna be here until 2 in the morning. I couldn't fail. And then it was 2 in the morning. I did not hook it a single time. Another fun experience from my favorite cave fishing. Good news was around though, as after all this time, my dormancy barn was complete, allowing me to send a whole load of currently not producing shimmering animals off to sleep indefinitely. This was great, but again, the fish was still at large. Appearing in the sandy mines, I knew it came out at night, taking advantage of this extra time to gather up sand for my greenhouse. Then when shortly night fell, I would take the elevator down to the icy levels to throw in my line. Comedically enough, I was fishing until 2 in the morning once again, hooking exactly 12 cave shrimp in that time, but not a single bite from my target. Frustration seeping in, I got a little worried, noticing my moth flowers were yet to germinate. I was still in a good mood though, as no fishing due to today's festival. I smelted some glass for the greenhouse. When night fell, I finally planted the grave creepers before wandering down and entering the lantern festival. First of all, I purchased some lanterns from Mr. Caravan. In the festivities though, this time I wanted to get all of the riddles correct, and thanks to my veteran status, I was able to do exactly that. With 6 tokens in my disposal, I crafted up some lanterns of varying color and shape before spending my very last on a wish for luck. Together, the town watched as we let all the lanterns slowly float up into the sky, a truly beautiful sight. Returning home, I carefully placed both floating lanterns in my pond. Today was my birthday, made very evident by the massive influx of letters to my box. Everyone was super nice in giving me food and such, even... Wait a minute, what was that? Oh, I think I may be in, lads. The final cave plant that I needed to research was the gloomberry. So beginning its observations, I descended again to the icy levels in order to find some. Managing to locate 3 and foraging for the seeds, I was more than happy to leave, collecting my fish basket winnings, just some snails and stuff. Then as soon as night fell, I made another return to these bane of my existent levels in search of the elusive final fish. As I sat here, I caught a cave shrimp, then a cave shrimp, then a cave shrimp, then a cave shrimp, then amazingly, I hooked the last cave fish. Could this be the end? Once again, it was impossible. Cave fishing in research story makes me want to quit video games. Finally though, my letters had not withered, completing its research and promptly heading across to hand it in. On my way though, I found something very interesting. There were 2 medieval knights trying to persuade Theo to come back to their kingdom. Apparently, he was a prince who had escaped from his royal duties to make me like sheds and stuff. They left him alone eventually and he seemed chill about everything. Alright, I guess picking up my golden watering can, I in turn ordered a golden hoe. Returning home to pick up the 15 glass I had saved for the greenhouse, wandering to the carpenters and suddenly defeated when I realized I needed 5 more. Well, no better time than now, I thought, as I made my return to the sandy section, gathering it off the floor until the clock struck 6. It was once again time to fish. To no one's surprise, I didn't hook it a single time, instead managing 0 normal fish, 11 cave shrimp, and 18 pieces of garbage. Is that not incomprehensible? Alright, 3 of them still left to catch. I smelted the last of the sand into panes, bringing them to the carpenters and at long last ordering myself a greenhouse. I also miraculously ran into another shimmering duck and tamed it, giving it a home and food, as it was going to be one of the bigger profit makers on my farm. Before night fell, I spent my time making some fabric, which I used to craft another shade cloth. Oh, it's 6 o'clock. Descending rapidly into the icy areas, I was determined to get at least 1 today. Immediately, I hooked one, a great sign, until it didn't let me catch it. I was so annoyed, I caught myself reading the fishing tutorial to see if I had missed anything. It didn't help, as the very next hook was also just entirely cosmetic. I had processed at this point that this fish had a literal 25% chance of even being able to be caught after hooking it. Still, I enjoyed fishing on until I landed my first one, followed closely by a second. I then fell asleep in the cave. Still, I was happy with 2 out of the 3 caught, so picking up my golden hoe the next morning, I replaced the order with a maxed out hammer, the chroma tier. Still some time until night fell, I downed a strength potion and cleared out the bottom of the summit, ignoring of course the trees that I had tapped. Using the saplings, I extended my small tree farm up there, continuing by clearing out the trees growing around the cave entrance, until of course night fell. Today would be the night I completed the final cave fish research, I said with confidence as I was hit with another classic impossible catch. Then I never got another bite from it for the entire rest of the night. In total, I caught 9 cave shrimp and 11 pieces of garbage. Crawl forward, continue to crawl forward. I had spent so much time in the mines that I had too much stone, so I made a new chest just for stone. How fun is that? I then crafted up another composter in which I manufactured some fertilizer for the gloomberry, even setting up the perfect planting area, but remembering it had to be sowed during the night, I waited around a little, planting them in the ground and teleporting straight to the mines. I had a feeling today was the day. The first hook was another good old impossible fish, but after so many casts, so much bait spent, so many cave shrimp caught, and so many days spent, I finally secured the last cave fish, completing the set of all cave fish research. I returned to the surface and wandered home. Satisfied. Even more research was done. The grave creeper, apparently, so tending to my animals, I made my way down and submitted both papers. In return, I got a ring that reduces the amount of garbage I get from fishing. Wow, absolutely brilliant work in the timing department there. At this point though, I was basically done for autumn though, so with some free time on my hands, I decided to expand my fish storage slightly before wandering into town to check the price of a house upgrade. I needed 25 stone bricks, so returning home, I got to work smelting them all. A slight panic set in when I realized he closed at 5, locking in and getting the required planks too, sprinting back down and into the store, ordering the upgrade just in time. To celebrate this great success, I drunk away in the tavern, buying some black apple juice and handing it to Yan Yan. Greydor was working hard on my house, and I decided today would be dedicated to securing any resources for future house upgrades. Picking up my new chroma hammer and ordering a copper scythe, I spent a short while searching for any shimmering ducks in my area, downing a strength potion and getting to work chopping all the trees surrounding Ria's home. Once I was done, I continued down to the waterfall, eating forage constantly to keep myself going. Eventually though, my energy ran dry and I returned to my farm with more than a stack of wood. My animals were working hard. I made 4 grand the next morning, not trying to flex, but I didn't feed them for 6 months. On top of this, the moth flower research was complete, but I realized I'd been making a bit of a blunder. I was yet to water my gloomberry a single time, so quickly getting it a sprinkler, I apologized, and remembering about my greenhouse, I gave it a little visit. It's pretty large. I wanted to fill it with sprinklers, but without the resin to do so, I exited my farm with the goal of changing exactly that. I was sure one of these types of trees would give me some, so I chopped away. My mission failed. I had remembered about something else though. Picking up an iron bar, I headed over to Lakeside, entering Sesame's store and upgrading my rod. Annoyed that I hadn't done this before, I returned with gold and chroma, getting it to max level in preparation for the winter fish. My scythe was done the next morning, so I headed into town and asked for it to be upgraded again. While I was at it, I purchased a large amount of resin from Theo, using it to make a single chrome sprinkler. These were not cheap, costing a whole gilded gem each, and what's more, I realized the greenhouse was optimized for golden sprinklers anyway. Massive loss taken. I just moved my golden sprinklers inside and deciding on filling it with blueberries for profit. Obviously, I got started on the required 96 acidic fertilizer. The main loss with this was the fiber, so visiting the summit, I gathered birch leaves as best I could, continuing my efforts throughout the night. Tomorrow morning though, I woke up to a gigantic house. Moving my stuff around, I explored the new kitchen and the colossal sink in my bathroom. I was truly impressed, so wanting to see the next upgrade, I was shut down by the store being closed, instead running to the summit and gathering more leaves. Shoving them straight into the composters, I continued my efforts to make acidic fertilizer, eventually realizing that there was no chance I had enough fiber. As such, I hatched a plan. This involved planting a large plot of garlic, letting them die, then using the dried leaves as compost material. My devious plot fully set up, I quickly wandered downwards to submit my moth flower research as well as purchase some more speed potions. Blueberry seeds were also a problem, so harvesting some from my small plot, I turned them all into seeds, resolving the issue immediately and walking out to town to upgrade my new iron scythe to gold. Chroma wasn't important, but wanting to see if I could max out some tools, I returned to the hot levels as I was rich enough to afford infinite cold potions and just hung out. Luck was not on my side and I ended up with 2 chroma ores in total. With just 1 day until winter, I was happy to see my plan worked perfectly. Gathering the dried leaves, I made the last fertilizer I required, entering my greenhouse to almost fill it completely with fertilizer, then seeds. I even managed to water it all too, which didn't take any energy thanks to the dexterity potion I had drunk beforehand. And just like that, it was the first day of my second winter. I had a lot of work to do, beginning research on 3 different winter plants and wandering out, running into a new blue sheep creature who I began research on. My observing had been very efficient though, and reading that both winter bean and some flower required kelp fertilizer, I crafted a bunch, planting them both. Now that night was close, I finally began researching the nighttime winter fish, casting out a line in the river, and using my new and improved chroma rod, I somehow completed the entire research in just 3 casts. They do say, what comes around goes around. I'm a proud father to my blueberries. They're growing up so well and will surely provide me a vast amount of profit. Heading into town, I picked up my golden scythe, beginning research on the daytime winter fish. I crafted up some pink bait using cherry blossoms, then wandered over to the waterfall. Here I sat until nightfall, unfortunately only securing 1 out of the 2 required for completion. I tended the bare minimum for my animals the next morning, returning straight to the waterfall in order to complete the research. Quickly enough though, I realized I had to land the second one inside the icy caves. Slowly descending, I got fishing. Please fish, be nice, I have trauma from being down here. My bad luck did come around though, and I secured the fish in no time at all, finishing the research and allowing me to wander south to the archive and submit both papers. Just like that, I had fully completed the fishing shelf I had been allocated, feeling pretty great about myself, and as it was hand them in day, I returned to the archive and, in the name of leveling up, I put them all onto display. Unfortunately, I still needed 4 requests to complete, so accepting 3 of them, I bought a sandwich sandwich and handed it to Valley, picked up some fiber which I handed to Ria, and finally brought a smooth pebble over to the tavern and handed it to Zuri. Job well done. I spent the night observing some winter foxes, taming 2 of them, and upon returning home rearranging some pens in order to accommodate well for them. I'd have thought the next morning, is the crystal butterfly a loved gift by Tegan? I climbed up into her bedroom, handed it over, and no, it wasn't. While I was here, I visited the general store, where I purchased some cooking utensils and an auto feeder, returning to my farm to tend to my animals. I noticed here that my veggie bowls were just about to run dry, prompting me to cook up a quite stupid amount of bowls and carefully splitting them between everyone worth feeding. I remembered I needed the blue sheep as well, so taming it, I gave it a suitable home and some food, spending the remainder of the day placing the new utensils and looking around through any potential recipes. Well, a massive throw for me had occurred, consisting of forgetting to feed my winter foxes. Oh well, checking on my blueberries again, I made a visit to Alfie's, where I purchased 2 more auto collectors, placing them in 2 convenient places and marveling at the magnificence of my farm. Anyways, I just had some waiting to do now, so I spent the day shaking my expanding birch farm for leaves and collecting fiber on my farm. Some of the waiting was complete at least when my blue sheep research was complete. Arriving at the archive, it was the final piece of the Special Creatures Volume 2, rewarding me with a taming charm. This got me having some big ideas for tonight, so sure that I would tame the second winter nocturnal animal that I pre-made a whole tundra pen. Taking a quick nap until night fell, I walked all around only finding 1 to observe. So no taming tonight. Don't count your chickens before they've hatched. But even more waiting was done the next morning, with my winter foxes giving me their produce. This was great, but petting everyone was slowly becoming a chore. To remedy this terrible situation, I wandered down, purchasing 15 music boxes from the general store and installing 1 on each pen. Great, my only job now was collecting the profits, as any good CEO should have it. Returning to the archive, I accepted 1 last job request before my level up, quickly handing some ladybugs over to Tegan and finally unlocking the last research slot. On top of this, preserved items now increased the price to 1.5 times. I was probably balling though, so buying some flowers from Yan Yan and some paintings from Ming, I placed them around my large home, beginning research on the winter flower, the final flora to complete, then headed out looking for some dragons to observe. I managed to forage for the flower's seeds, but realizing the dragon ate seafood, I returned home, made a large amount of bowls and tamed 2, giving them a nice home. I carefully moved some plants around the next morning to fulfill their curious trait. I also finally planted down the last flower, checking on my blueberries and very much liking their progress. They were very close to making me hugely rich. I had the day off though today, so spending it making fabric, heading into town to give out gifts, handing Tegan a lava beetle, which unfortunately was another miss. I handed out flowers to everyone in the tavern. My dragonlings were happy, but the research wasn't complete as I was yet to identify enough prints. Nevertheless, I completed my gloomberry research and my bean research that same day, celebrating until I realized I'd forgotten to plant snow puffs, sowing them quickly. The real last flora, you could say. Taking a quick nap until nightfall, I confidently headed outside, across the bridge, downing another speed potion, and began my search for dragonling prints. Eventually finding one beside the lake, I sat and watched as it wandered around, scaring it whenever to make it move, finally seeing some footprints appear, which I observed, completing the research. And with the others I finished recently, I entered the archive, fully completing the animals shelf, receiving a statue, and also fully completing the fruit and vegetables shelf, receiving a blueprint for a porter chest. It was a triumphant day as I returned, placing all 4 of my statues in my home. My golden fans got harvested the next day, finishing up the paper on them. Just 2 more flowers until my job is complete. Huge news though, my blueberries were ready for harvest now, yielding me an impressive 289 in total. Selling them quickly, I wandered into town to hand in my golden fan research, taking this opportunity to check the price for a house upgrade. Money was not the issue, but I did need 30 stone bricks, quite the investment in terms of coal. Running out was my worry, so arriving at the mines, I dug about the shallower levels, collecting as much as I could, resurfacing when I felt satisfied enough to return home and smelt up a large amount of stone bricks. While they were going, I also cut all the wood required, but unfortunately, by the time I had everything ready, Greydor had long since left his store. So I went there first thing the next morning, embarrassingly realizing I had the wrong amount of wood, returning home to fix the mistake, and finally purchasing the upgrade. While I was here, I entered the carpenter and ordered another dormancy barn, just because I'm wealthy, now systematically placing anyone without a home inside my first barn. I do have something to admit though, collecting profits wasn't my only job. I never had enough egg bowls, so I was manually feeding my cats, foxes, and dogs each day. But now, things would change. Using a heap of duck and chicken eggs, I crafted a large proportion of bowls, automating further by buying 3 more auto feeders from the general store, as well as more egg bowls from the stump in case I ran out too quickly. I placed them and fed the lads. Now truly, my only job is to reap the benefits of others' hard work. I spent the day clearing some space, shaking all the birch trees degrees on the summit and relaxing in the hot spring, using my rejuvenated body to clear every last piece of debris on my farm. I was running into a new problem though. My shipping bin was far too small to fit all of my animal products. Harvesting my blueberries again, I just put them in a chest as there was no way to sell them, spending the day making fabric as I awaited my flowers to fully grow. Once the fabric was complete, I wandered into town, handing it to Ira. I also set up one last hangout in 2 days when the research was projected to be complete. I was halfway there the next day when my hem bits became harvestable. After all this time, I was finally just waiting on the snow puffs to grow. I decided in the meantime to try cooking some dishes. So picking a recipe out, I slowly gathered all of the ingredients, returning to my home to chef it up. I made some meaty stew and spooky stew, deciding that in general food was good enough to warrant a quick trip to the general store, where I mass purchased all of the basic ingredients, returning home to use them to the best of my ability. But finally, I woke up to another gigantic home upgrade. I had a new bedroom with an ensuite and a corridor leading up to 2 new rooms. Debating for quite some time about the perfect place for my statue collection, it ended up in the upper rooms. But more importantly, my snow puffs were ready, and picking them, my journey was complete. First though, I had a bit of a date with Ira. Wandering over very nonchalantly, I met her outside the archive. We slowly walked over together until we arrived in the garden. We chatted on the bench, enjoyed the various flowers being grown here, and chilled out in the gazebo for some time. It was enjoyable, but the time had come. Walking up to the archive, I entered, submitting the final 2 research papers, receiving a statue, and as such, all 4 shelves were filled completely. I placed this statue with my others, ending my time in Shimmerbrook by reading up on my fellow researchers' papers, heading home and falling asleep on my massive bed. And then, as you know, I woke up here. I had found out too many secrets or something. I can't thank you enough for watching until the end. If you enjoyed, please subscribe. I'm trying to hit 100,000 by the end of this year, but we'll see. Thanks for watching.